Reabina, Elele, Aretete, Reabina, Elele, Aretete, Reabina, Elele, Poi Poi, my baro, Elele, Poi Poi, my baro, Elele.
Tutti le gens collaborarono, collabone, Rafitella, Roa, Apicami, Rababuz, Kinli Picami, Barrio Budutu, Molontone, Barrio Budutu, Molontone, Rababine, Receptigiano, Rababine, Ronavazuana.
Rebadisa, Mobotswana, Redisite, Rebadisa, Mobotswana, Redisite, Rebadisa, Mobotswana, Redisite, Rebadisa, Mobotswana, Redisite, Rebatswana, Mobotswana, Elele, Rebatswana, Mobotswana, Elele, Rebatswana, Mobotswana, Elele, Rebatswana, Mobotswana, Elele.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is 6 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you and welcome to Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda and we are broadcasting from our Johannesburg studios. That's in South Africa. To connect with us, you can via mobile connect to the SABC Plus app. You can also go on your YouTube channel. That's where we are live streaming. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle there. And also our website, which is www.channelafrica.co.za. We are together for the next 3 hours. Of course, we welcome your views and questions about the show. You can get in touch with us through various social media platforms. We're literally everywhere, so you can find us there. We'll be getting into our programming shortly, and it's Friday, the 3rd of October, what I like to call Peter Ndoro Day. He's not in today, so I'll be solo driving this ship. But yeah, let's give you all the news and current affairs from the African perspective on Rise and Shine. First, let's start with our news then, before we get into our programming. That's by Joanne Tulonga. Mpepe. Following her will be Fikile Mwai. He has also headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The United Nations has expressed hope that Israel will respect the rights of the flotilla detainees and release them unharmed. Israel has taken control over 41 vessels and detained over 400 activists, including some South Africans. President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on Israel to release the activists, including Nkosi Zwelile Mandla Mandela. In a social media post, Israel's foreign ministry announced that the detained crew members would be deported to a European country, though the destination has not yet been disclosed. UN spokesperson Farhan Haq said people carrying humanitarian aid should be left alone.
We want to make sure that all civilians are treated fairly and are not harmed. Our belief is that people who are simply carrying humanitarian aid should be left alone. We're aware of the different countries and the different fleets and different ships who have been involved in this. Obviously, at the center of it is the right of people to draw attention to humanitarian crisis, and we wanted them to be able to do that without harm.
Malawi's President-elect Peter Mutharika is set to take the oath of office tomorrow alongside Vice President-elect Justice Jane Ansah. The former head of state staged a strong comeback in last month's election, securing 56.8% of the vote against incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera's 33%. Several African leaders are expected to attend the inauguration ceremony. The Malawian President-elect has outlined the task ahead.
The challenges before us are real. Our economy must recover. Food must be available for everyone. Jobs must be created. Our healthcare and education systems must be strengthened. Infrastructure must be improved. And above all, we must rebuild trust in the public institutions.
Organisers of Madagascar's youth-led anti-government protests have suspended marches in the capital Antananarivo for 24 hours, citing concerns over demonstrators' health and strength. However, marches continued in other parts of the island nation yesterday, inspired by similar youth-led Gen Z protests in Kenya and Nepal. The rallies mark the largest wave of unrest in Madagascar in years. Those also pose a significant challenge to President Andry Rajoelina, who was re-elected in 2023. The United Nations says at least 22 people have been killed and more than 100 injured so far in the week-long protests, figures rejected by the government. Zambia's High Commissioner-designate to South Africa, Grace Mutembu, has reaffirmed Zambia's commitment to supporting international peace and security. Speaking in Pretoria, Mutembu praised South Africa's leadership on matters of continental and global security. She also congratulated South Africa on assuming the presidency of the G20 from December 2024 to November 2025, a milestone she described as a source of pride not only for South Africa but for the entire African continent.
Your Excellency, Zambia recognizes South Africa's key role on matters affecting continental and international security. I therefore reaffirm Zambia's unwavering commitment to supporting global efforts aimed at achieving international security and sustained peace. I further wish to extend our warmest congratulations to the Republic of South Africa for assuming the presidency of the G20 for the period beginning December 2024 to November 2025.
The government of Papua New Guinea has approved a delayed defence agreement with Australia. It will now go to Parliament in Port Moresby for ratification. The BBC's Peter Bowes has the details.
Australia is keen to counter China's growing influence in the Pacific region, and with this in mind, it's been trying to sign defence agreements with its neighbours. But a planned signing ceremony during a visit by the Australian Prime Minister last month didn't go ahead, reportedly because the Papuan cabinet hadn't agreed, amid concerns over national sovereignty. However, consensus has now been achieved.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African perspective.
In a sports headline, Amajita bounced back and thrashed New Caledonia at the Under-17 World Cup. And defending champion Coco Gauff beat Eva Leys in straight sets to reach her third consecutive China Open semi-final. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
I think we're going to have one of those very busy sporting weekends. I think especially tomorrow, rugby, soccer, tennis, and all sorts of things happening there. We're going to find out more, of course, as we get our full bulletin from Fikile Lingwati later in the show after headlines with Jolani Tulo Mwepe. It's now 6:08. Let's take a look at the Africa Roundup. This is the section or segment of the show on Rise and Shine, where we bring you up to speed with some stories that you might have missed. Our team of researchers, our reporters and editors compiled this list of news for you, and it also serves as what you can expect to develop in the world of news in this new day. It's the 3rd of October, of course. Good morning to you if you've just joined us here on Channel Africa. So in our Africa Roundup today, we begin with Morocco, where Moroccan state media say that 2 people were killed when police officers opened fire as they were attempting to storm a police station in Ouklia. The deaths come amid a wave of youth-led protests. The BBC's Sebastian Asher has more.
These are the first deaths connected with some of the biggest street protests for years in Morocco. The demonstrations broke out on Saturday amid growing anger at the state of schools and hospitals. There have been violent confrontations with the security forces in several cities. There's no formal leadership of the protesters, but the main group involved is called Gen Z 212, making clear its affiliation with the youth of Morocco. As huge amounts of money are being spent on preparing for the World Cup, a popular chant among the protesters has been, "Stadiums are here, but where are the hospitals?"
United Nations agency says more than 16,000 people have been killed in Haiti in the past 3 years, more than 1.3 million displaced. The BBC's Mimi Swabi has more details.
It's now estimated more than 90% of Port-au-Prince is controlled by armed gangs, with kidnapping, sexual violence and killings common. But the UN warns the worst may be yet to come. In recent months, the Haitian government has stepped up its use of explosive drones in its anti-gang operations, but this tactic has been criticised for causing deaths of civilians. Earlier this week, the UN Security Council approved a resolution endorsing a larger force with military troops to address the gang warfare.
At least 36 people have been killed after scaffolding collapsed during a religious festival at Adaretri St. Mary Church in Ethiopia's Amara region. Officials say the structure gave way as crowds gathered for the annual celebration. David Doyle has more.
Hundreds had gathered for worship when, according to survivor Tedesse Tesfaye, the scaffolding crumbled.
It just crushed the people beneath. Some who were on the peripheries ran outside, but those in the midst perished. Some people were hanging and were brought down with the help of others. Those who were crushed under me died. I was praying, "Holy Mary, save me, save me."
Tesfaye said those in the centre were trapped. Dust engulfed him, he said, and he covered his mouth with a scarf.
When I regained strength and looked beneath me, I saw people had died under me. Then I got up and carried a dead body outside.
A 9-month-old baby has died of malaria in northern Cameroon after arriving too late for treatment, highlighting a surge in fatalities that health officials blame on U.S. cuts to foreign aid. Kirsty Kilburn reports.
For nearly a decade, the U.S. played a leading role in northern Cameroon's malaria response. But upon taking office in January, U.S. President Donald Trump paused all foreign aid, including the President's Malaria Initiative, or PMI. Launched in 2005, PMI is credited with helping save over 11 million lives and prevent over 2 billion malaria cases. It made Cameroon a focus country in 2017, and recorded malaria deaths in the far north dropped from a little over 1,500 in 2020 to about 650 in 2024. A limited waiver issued in February allowed life-saving work on malaria to continue, but PMI's 30 partner countries, most of them in Africa, have reported major disruptions linked to the closing of the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Scientist and global conservationist Jane Goodall, who turned a childhood fascination with primates into a lifelong mission to protect the natural world, has died at the age of 91. The primatologist turned campaigner went from a seaside English village to Africa and then the world stage, seeking to understand chimpanzees and the role humans play in safeguarding their habitat and the planet's Earth. Christy Kilburn again.
Goodall was a pioneer, both as a female scientist in the 1960s as well as for her work studying primates. She blazed a path to follow for a number of women, including the late Diane Fossey. She worked to bring the chimps she loved into the lives of the public, partnering with National Geographic for films, TV, and magazines. By giving chimpanzees names instead of numbers, focusing on their relationships and emotions, and finding that they used tools, she upended scientific norms of the time. She said in a 2002 TED Talk that there isn't a sharp line dividing humans from the rest of the animal kingdom.
That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup, a bit of a gloomy one on this Friday with so many lives lost in different parts of the world. So we'll bring this again to you on Monday here on Rise and Shine. It comes after the 6 a.m. news, and stay with us for more details on what's happening in our world and in our continent.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has been charged with incitement to terrorism and disobedience. He faces a total of 5 charges. The charges relate to post-election violence that left hundreds of people dead. What punishment is he looking at?
The most severe charges are 2. One is incitement for terrorism, and also is being charged for mobilizing people for terrorism during the protests. These charges are really serious and severe. If he is condemned, is found guilty, he could serve 10 years plus years in jail, meaning that he would be banned from political participation, mainly for the 2028 and 2029 electoral cycle.
The director of CDD, the Center for Democracy and Development, Adriano Novunga.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
15 minutes past 6 Central African time it is. Let's get more into the news as we go to the U.S., where Republican and Democrats continue to blame each other over the ongoing U.S. government shutdown that went into effect early Wednesday as President Donald Trump ramps up threats to cut what he referred to as democratic agencies, in addition to mass firings to the federal workforce. Senate Democrats have largely rejected funding legislation to keep the government open as they seek Republican concessions on healthcare policy, including a continuation of subsidies in the Affordable Care Act, which were due to expire at the end of the year. Republicans counter that Democrats are seeking to provide healthcare benefits to undocumented immigrants, a charge Democrats have rejected as false. Here's Sherwin Bryce Peace with more.
The shutdown affects hundreds of thousands of non-essential federal employees who are furloughed, while many services are curtailed, from national parks to museums, among others. Most federal workers and members of the military will not be paid until the shutdown is over, as both major parties dig in. Hakeem Jeffries is leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives.
What we will not do is support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. Over the last several months, Republicans have created a health care crisis in the United States of America. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history, triggering the possibility of a $536 billion cut to Medicare if Congress does not act because of what happened with the One Big Ugly Bill. Republicans have refused to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and as a result of that, millions of working class Americans are going to experience skyrocketing premiums, copays, and deductibles at a time when America is already too expensive.
Republicans have signaled a willingness to engage on Democratic healthcare concerns, but only when the government is reopened, as they seek support from Senate Democrats to reach the 60-vote threshold to pass a clean, continuing resolution that would fund the government at existing levels until November 21st. Listen to Vice President J.D. Vance.
What they have done instead is to shut down the government because we won't give billions of dollars to healthcare funding for illegal aliens. That is what has actually happened. To the American people who are watching, the reason your government is shut down at this very minute is because, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of congressional Republicans and even a few moderate Democrats supported opening the government, the Chuck Schumer AOC wing of the Democratic Party shut down the government because they said to us, we will open the government, but only if you give billions of dollars of funding for health care for illegal aliens. That's a ridiculous proposition.
U.S. law prohibits undocumented immigrants from gaining access to federal healthcare benefits, as both sides seek to shape the narrative in this high-stakes political standoff, as Georgetown University government affairs analyst Matt Glassman explains.
Both parties have factions that really want to fight here. And the first thing leaders have to do is to demonstrate to those factions that they're fighting. Part of the reason I think we're in this shutdown is because Senator Schumer feels like a portion of his caucus in the Senate, and that is reflective of a portion of Democrats in the country, really just want someone to stand up to Trump and fight. And so demonstrating that fight is going to be stage one of this. And whether that lasts a day, 2 days, 3 days, or 5 days, that will come to an end, and people who just want to fight will be satisfied that you've shown some mettle here. And that sort of loosens up the negotiating room for others who actually want to strike bargaining deals.
Glassman also offering a perspective on what a future compromise might actually look like, particularly around the Affordable Care Act.
I don't think on the particular issues, for instance, on the ACA subsidies, that the two parties are actually that far apart. I think there's plenty of Republicans who do want to expand those. And so, you can see ultimately the deal would be something like the Democrats agree to vote to reopen the government, and the Republicans agree sort of just with assurances or a handshake deal that they will negotiate in good faith over those ACA subsidies over the next 6 weeks. And that's the kind of sort of low stakes deal that doesn't involve huge decisions being written in law that you can kind of see easily coming together.
And on the president's role.
The president is behaving differently here than presidents have in past shutdowns, I would say. Trump has already signaled that he is going to approach the shutdown differently than other presidents, and may even try and use the shutdown to reach some of his ideological goals. For instance, firing workers instead of furloughing them.
This is the first government shutdown since 2018 during President Trump's first term. That shutdown was the longest in U.S. history, lasting 34 days. But experts don't expect this one to drag on for that long. With the Senate out of session Thursday in observance of Yom Kippur, another vote could come as early as Friday. The question remains which side will blink first, and at what political cost. I'm Shervin Bryce-Pease in New York.
As part of Cyber Security Awareness Month this October, South Africa's Government Communication and Information System is hosting a webinar focused on the theme Responsible Use of Digital Platforms. The session aims to raise public awareness about online safety, equipping citizens with the knowledge to protect themselves and use digital spaces responsibly. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Simusa has more.
The discussion is focused on online safety, identify fraudulent communication, promoting digital literacy, and highlighting the role of government and organizations in driving greater cybersecurity awareness. Brigadier Rapula Masito, head of a cybercrime investigation unit at the Directorate for Private Crime Investigation, the Hawks, with South African Police Services, outlined some of the common trends the police are encountering.
Most significant one we observe on most instances where there is a ransomware attacks either on individuals, that is persons, but mainly on the companies and the private institutions. This is very, very common and very high. We've got several cases that we are dealing with in terms of ransomware attacks and the denial of service attacks as well. So those are the two dominant challenges that we have.
The question remains, how prevalent are these trends across South Africa?
These are very rife in South Africa. They are very rife almost everywhere because they started emerging in the last few years, but now they are becoming more and more effective. And then the threat actors are using these things more carefully. They harvest information, and then when it is time for them to attack, they will do so.
Ompile Hwati Nkiwani from Digiti Africa shares practical tips on how people can stay safe while navigating the internet.
Don't use open Wi-Fi. This one is a big one, and I think most of us, when we're desperate and we didn't want to buy data, we've done this. We've used public Wi-Fi, which is actually, it's diabolical. That it's one of the worst ones. And of course, build critical thinking. Like I said, I don't know if you guys remember Gumtree. They used to have this tagline saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So just use your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. If something if something doesn't make sense, if somebody's rushing you, if there's a link you must press into to go fetch some imaginary thing, if there's like a competition that you never enter, just don't do it.
Meanwhile, the Film and Publications Board, Holisane Ramogadi, underscored the importance of digital literacy.
As much as parents give children access to the digital platforms, parents do not have an understanding or comprehend how much goes on into those devices. My colleague from DCDT did indicate the issue of digital literacy, because the increase in platforms, the messaging platforms where the perpetrators are able to access the children and the vulnerable people are growing day in, day out, and the parents do not even know where to look. So the digital literacy becomes very critical, but also raising awareness every day is a tool that will assist us to fight with this animal.
The message here is clear. Think before you click and stay safe online. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simos in Johannesburg.
South Africa's ruling African National Congress, or the ANC, has publicly distanced itself from Brown Mokgotsi, an alleged associate of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who is currently on a leave of absence. Speaking at the party's headquarters in Johannesburg, ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula told journalists that certain dubious characters are exploiting the ANC's name and its officials for alleged criminal activities. The remarks come amid revelations at the Madlanga Commission, where Crime Intelligence Chief Dumisani Khumalo presented messages between Vusi Muzi, Kat Matlala, and Mokgotsi. The chats reportedly show Mokgotsi pressuring Matlala to provide funds for ANC events and political memberships in 2 regions. Sbahle Mota reports.
The ANC has distanced itself from Brown Mokgotsi, a Northwest businessman and an alleged associate of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. This week, the Madlanga Commission heard how Mokgotsi used controversial businessman and attempted murder accused Vusumuzi Ket Matlala to bankroll ANC events. Mbalula says there are those who will abuse the name of the ANC and its members to get away with nefarious acts.
We will never associate ourselves with characters like Brian Mokgotsi if he's a member of the ANC and his activities. He must account about that, and the ANC will stand up to such characters who pride themselves openly and publicly about the pride of being involved in things that do not raise the name of the ANC in good stead.
Mbalula was further quizzed when Senzo Mchunu, an ANC-NEC member, will present himself before the party's Integrity Commission. Mbalula says all ANC members who are scheduled to appear before it will do so soon.
So Comrade Senzo will appear before the Integrity Commission and all other members who are required by all standards to either voluntarily present themselves or they will then be summoned by the Integrity Commission. And then we'll keep you abreast about the outcome once the NEC have received the reports on those matters.
Mbalula also expressed the party's support for the Madlanga Commission, adding that the inquiry is evidence of the ANC's fight against corruption and maladministration.
And if Madlanga Commission is going to help us exercise in the system of the ANC by extension such criminal elements, let this opportunity not be missed by such. But I can tell you, on behalf of the ANC, criminal elements who are throwing our name as a movement and the ANC in vain will never be tolerated, even for a day in our party. And at the present moment is the last time they go around brandishing the name of the ANC for this and that and their own activities.
Meanwhile, the party will hold a special NEC from this coming Saturday to Monday to finalize its guidelines on the list process to select its candidates that will contest in the local government elections. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get that fresh perspective now from Jolane Tulo Ngwepe, who brings us our news headlines. It's 6:30 Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, the United Nations has expressed hope that Israel will respect the rights of the flotilla detainees and release them unharmed. Youth-led protests have continued for a 6-day, running in towns and cities across Morocco. And finally, Malawi's President-elect Peter Mutharika is set to take the oath of office tomorrow alongside Vice President-elect Justice Jane Ansah. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Time now to say good morning to Fikile Lingwati again, this time with our full sports bulletin.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We kick off with football news. South Africa secured their first win at the Under-20 FIFA World Cup ongoing after thrashing New Caledonia 5-0. Coach Raymond Mdaga handed starts to Mfundo Vilagazi and Siviwe Magitikiti, with Jody N. Shin and Kutlwano Letlaku dropping to the bench. The South Africans came into the contest on the back of a 2-1 loss to France on Monday night, while Caledonia suffered a humiliating 8-0 defeat to the United States in the Group E opener. The African champions, Amajita, will be back in action on Sunday night when they take on the United States. Still with football news, the Confederation of African Football President Patrice Motsepe will attend the CAF Zonal Union meetings ahead of the 47th CAF Ordinary General Assembly in Kinshasa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. The CAF zonal meetings will kick off today on Friday until Saturday. They form an integral part of CAF's ongoing commitment to strengthen collaboration and development across all regions of the continent. Motsepe's participation underlines CAF's dedication to engaging directly with member associations through their regional structures, addressing opportunities and challenges in the collective effort to accelerate the growth of African football. The zonal union meetings will precede the 47th Ordinary General Assembly, which brings together African football's key stakeholders in Kinshasa for strategic discussions and decisions that will shape the future of the game on the continent. Now on to cricket news. South Africa's it's netball now, where the netball team will take on the world champions Australian Diamonds in the 3-match series across 3 states in Australia. South Africa arrived in Australia earlier this week, fresh from the recent series against New Zealand. Currently ranked 5th in the world netball rankings, the Spar Proteas will come into the series highly motivated and determined to improve on past performances. Head coach Jenny van Dijk has travelled with a 15-player squad. Van Dijk has emphasized that for the Proteas to become one of the best teams in the world, they must consistently compete against and challenge high-ranked opposition. Van Dijk speaks about not making too many changes to the player personnel.
The 12 players we have been running with has been doing a great job for us. And the 3 new players have been training well. And they did get opportunity. One of them did get opportunity within the 12. But for us, it is important to also understand who the players are that needs the experience and that needs the exposure, and that's got what it takes now to be able to perform for us on a world stage. So not that many changes.
Meanwhile, the 2 nations have met 46 times, with the Diamonds winning all encounters to date. The Spar Proteas will be eager to change that record as soon as possible. The last meeting between the 2 sides was in Hobart in 2023. Captain Kanyisa Chawane says the team is raring to go.
Everyone is quite excited, especially coming from the series that we were at and coming into this new one. Everyone is just excited for the challenge that's coming. So yeah, the mood is great. Everyone is excited. And we're just looking forward to actually getting on court and just continue performing like how we've started already.
Let's end with tennis news. Defending champion Coco Gauff beat Eva Lees in straight sets to reach her 3rd consecutive China Open semi-final. The world number 3 took 1 hour and 28 minutes to overcome her German opponent, 6-3 and 6-4. The American, a 2-time Grand Slam winner, broke Lees 3 times in the opening set, converting 3 of her 4 breakpoint opportunities. Gauff, who has struggled with her serve at times this season, had an impressive 79% first serve percentage throughout the match. She will face either Amanda Anisimova or Jasmine Paolini in the final 4. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Let's get into our G20 fact for this morning. It's the 3rd of October. Did you know the main element of the logo for South Africa's G20 presidency represents the king protea, which holds a special place in the hearts of South Africans as the national flower of the country. It embodies resilience, cultural pride, hope, and natural splendor. The Protea logo is covered with the colors of the country's flag. Those are green, gold, black, blue, red, and white, representing the country's diverse heritage and cultural vibrancy. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
Right, our apologies. It's time for our business news. I'll skip that, sorry. Here's Tabiso Lehuku to give us the first update for this Friday.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Ivory Coast says it has granted 11 new mining exploration permits to local and international companies for gold, cobalt and copper. This as the world's top cocoa producer seeks to attract further investment in its booming mining sector as it diversifies. Shandugo Legege has the details.
The new permits were announced by government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly after they were approved at a cabinet meeting. They come as Ivory Coast positions itself as a stable investment mining destination amid rising regulatory uncertainty in neighboring Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, where military juntas are tightening control over mining assets.
South African Trade and Industry Minister Pax Tau says the automotive sector needs to find alternative markets in Asia and within the African continent to remain sustainable. Tau was speaking on the second day of the annual Auto Week in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape province. The call come as the sector remains under pressure as global trade wars and local challenges put jobs at risk. Over the past 2.5 years, 5 of 7 companies within the automotive sector have shared jobs. Minister Tau says government is opening new markets to counter these pressures.
But if we work together, we can turn this picture around. Having returned from a recent trip in Saudi Arabia, I see potential in markets that have building auto industries where South Africa can play, or rather that are building auto industries where South Africa can play a significant role.
The CEO of BMW South Africa, Peter van Binsbergen, says South Africa and Europe should collaborate on building an alternative value chain for electric vehicle components such as batteries to reduce dependence on China. South Africa, which accounts for 51% of Africa's vehicle output, is seeking to position itself as a player in the global EV supply chain. But industry leaders say more policy clarity and investment are needed to unlock its potential. China currently dominates the global battery cell production, making it difficult for some automakers to meet rules of origin requirements for exports, particularly in Europe. The Minister of Electricity and Energy in South Africa, Dr. Hosien Turamogopa, has assured business people in the Mpumalanga province that electricity load reduction will soon be a thing of the past. Ramogopa was addressing delegates attending the 2-day investment and mining conference held in Middelburg. Among other things, the conference organized by the Mpumalanga provincial government is aimed at attracting investors in the province. Minister Hosien says electricity plays a critical role in economic development.
So we have taken a view, Premier. You remember we met here, I think, and I promised that I'll come back. 3 weeks ago, we announced we are going to eliminate load reduction in every village, in every township, every street, every household, and that we are going to do it in the next 12 months. It's an important statement because the investors here must not, leaving this place, say, but if I go to this municipality, I'll be subjected to load reduction.
China's biggest state banks are lending billions to Saudi Arabia's Aramco Jafurah gas project, though its funds have passed the opportunity to invest in the venture. Chinese banks provided more than a third of the financing for what will potentially be the biggest shale gas project outside of the U.S., with Bank of China, ICBC and China Construction Bank each lending about $1 billion and Agricultural Bank of China around $750 million. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,478 naira. Botswana 13 pula 20, Kenya 128 shilling 441, and Zambia 23 kwacha 78. The BRICS countries in Brazil's the dollar there, 5 real 33. Russia, 81 rubles 93. India, 88 rupees 72. China, 71 13. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 23 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is $3,851 and platinum $1,565 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $64.32 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, our time now is 6:42 Central African time, and we go now to Madagascar, where hundreds of protesters across Madagascar are calling for the resignation of President Andry Rajoelina. What initially began as youth-led demonstrations in the capital Antananarivo over water shortages and power blackouts had spread nationwide. The United Nations say at least 22 people have been killed and more than 100 injured so far in the week-long protests. However, government has rejected the figures. Joining us now is Jean-Luc Mutusami, journalist and director of media expertise, to discuss. Jean-Luc, good morning to you and thanks for making time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Thanks very much.
Dissatisfaction with shortages in water, in electricity and energy supply. These have rapidly escalated into one of the most serious protests in the country. Take us through to how we got here and how this escalated.
The situation is extremely complex, as you just mentioned, and it has been something building up during the last years. A new president who was re-elected, Andry Rajoelina, who was re-elected in 2023 with lots of promises. But unfortunately, and I was in Madagascar a few weeks ago, unfortunately, the situation has not changed, and it has become worse with these load shedding for electricity, water supply, which is not constant in the cities, in the country, and the youth. You know, this youth, this so-called Gen Z, who is quite silent, these young men and women who are just going to work, going to the university, they're just watching the elders, the people who've been accepting this situation for years, for decades, and now they said, stop, we don't want this anymore. And they came out in crowds, in huge crowds, in all over the country, and it started in Antananarivo, in the capital city. So the movement yesterday was brought to some kind of halt, just a kind of strategic pause, as they mentioned yesterday, and it's coming again today with other people asked by the youth to join in.
The President, Rajoelina, dissolved the government in response to these protests. Before this, the energy minister was removed from that post 7 days into the protests. Were these moves too little, too late, and why could they not quell these protests?
Well, it's, as you say, too little, too late, and what the youth is asking is a total reset all over the place. That is the president and all those who hold offices, who are in power for the last years, who've actually been passing the ball of power to people in this little circle. So it's too little, too late. The president is still in place. The government a new government has still not been formed. The president asked people to send their resumes to show if they could join a new government. Yesterday, opposition and governmental people who are elected at the National Assembly, they were sitting together to try to find out a solution out of this crisis. They've not been able to find a kind of consensus. So what we're waiting now is to see how, on one side, this movement is going to behave, is going to change, because there is now a new committee that was just announced this morning, a committee that is going to try to organize the movement, because the youth, they're just going out, they're just trying to show themselves and show what they want and say, demonstrate and say what they want. But there is a lack of organization. It seems that things are coming up little by little. It's going to be with some municipal councillors who are leading the movement. There's no leader as such, but a group of people, and they are calling for all forces of the country, be it the citizens, the church, trade unions, to join the movement today.
With these demonstrations in the capital, Antananarivo, security forces have reportedly responded violently with tear gas dispersed. Of course, as we mentioned, people have been killed and there's also scores injured, according to a hospital source. Why do you think the country would ban protests as they did initially? And how can they justify this kind of response from security forces?
Yeah, the security forces, they respond like this, but the reality also in the field is that on one side you have security forces who are really using what you just described, and at the same time there are other police officers who are joining the march and who are walking with the protesters. There are people, there's a real divide in the way security forces are behaving during these protests. And one of the calls that were made by this new committee, this new organization committee, I don't know which name they're going to give to it in a few hours maybe, is also to ask the military to join in. And if the military steps in favor of protesters, that could be a major shift.
On the 27th of September's gathering in the capital, schools ended up being shut down and curfews were implemented. How are businesses then in the capital affected by these protests, and what are they calling for, the business fraternity?
This is one of the main issues that people are facing. Shops are closed. People can't buy food. People can't buy anything. I have one colleague who was in Madagascar who just came to Mauritius for a conference and who is going back. And this is interesting. I'll just make one short note on this. It's that foreigners are not targeted by these protests. Flights are still on. International flights are still on. So some people are coming to Mauritius to buy soap, to buy little things to bring with them in their suitcases because shops are closed. And as you just said, this is one of the major collateral damages. It's that businesses are shut, no one goes to work, and it's a curfew and streets are empty just because anything could happen. There are looters who've been guided inside the groups to make some problems and to change the focus from a demonstration to looting. This is what some of the demonstrators say. And businesses are closed, and we don't know. I don't know how long people in Madagascar will be able to accept this situation, because it could bring something else, that is other people who are not involved in these demonstrations who may come and join in.
You mentioned the Gen Zs also being at the forefront of these protests. President Rajoelina came into power in 2009 after a coup, and then back in 2023, when he was re-elected, he promised reform. And one of the things he said was that he'll engage in direct dialogue with this group of Gen Zs, the young people of Madagascar particularly. Has this happened, and what difference has it made, if it has?
Oh, not really. You know, he is 51, and he himself, when he arrived in power in 2009, he was 35 or 34. And yes, these are all promises. And there's one element also which is very interesting there, is that they have lots of so-called influencers who are young and who are among the youth, supposedly among the youth. But these people are totally disconnected with what's really happening on the ground. They are just there to pass messages. And this connection with the youth, with the grassroots, with the people, the peasants, with the youth, and those who are outside, who have to earn their living every day, has not taken place. And this is why they want their voices to be heard. And this is the way they chose to do it.
What kind of role and influence does the church yield when it comes to particularly these protests, but generally in the political landscape of Madagascar? We know that members of the Council of Christian Churches in Madagascar, or the FFKM, and the Malagasy Bible Society have expressed solidarity with the families of the deceased from the protests, as well as those injured and those whose properties were destroyed. In what other ways can they help the country towards peace and finding lasting solutions?
I think they can try to initiate some kind of dialogue. Yesterday, a group of the FFKM went to the presidency and met the president to talk, to see how they can become some kind of in-between between the presidency and the demonstrators. They mentioned that they are preoccupied. And this is what the president said in a press communique. He said that he received encouragements from this group of religious leaders, of Christian leaders, and also that they prayed together. I think that what's important with this group is that they are credible, and to be able to initiate some kind of dialogue, the youth and the presidency have to find some kind of common ground and find credible actors to be mediators, and the church is one of them. And then there is another group, which is the military, but they have, I would say, other methods to be heard in this kind of situation. So mediators are few. The international community has tried to voice out its concern through some communiques, regional organizations. The SADC, for example, Madagascar is holding the presidency of the SADC this year after the summit that took place in August last. Other organizations like the Indian Ocean Commission and also all the local organizations, regional organizations, and the United Nations have voiced out their concerns. But for the time being, this is what can be done. That is press communiques, trying to find ways of mediation, but mediation needs one person and another from this group of demonstrators, and for the time being, there is no leader.
Jean-Luc, thank you so much again for your time, and I hope you do find some way of having a good weekend. Let's see where these protests go, but we're hoping that there is going to be a solution.
Thanks for having me. Goodbye.
Bye. Jean-Luc Mutusami is a journalist, director of media expertise, talking to us, giving us the latest in terms of Madagascar's protests. The young people taking to the streets protesting against water shortages as well as electricity cuts.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As Africa faces growing climate threats, widening financing gaps and shifting global trade patterns, experts say the continent can no longer afford to wait for others to set the rules of the green economy. These were among the key issues raised on the opening day of the B-Lab Africa Summit 2025, which concluded its first sessions in Johannesburg, South Africa yesterday, I guess. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has more.
Day one of the B-Lab Africa Summit brought together policymakers, investors, academics, and business leaders to shape solutions for a more sustainable and equitable continent. Lucy Mwiga, the CEO of B-Lab Africa, says the summit provides a vital platform for dialogue and collaboration.
So the B-Lab Africa Summit 2025 is our fourth annual summit. We've held one for the last 4 years. The reason why we've held this summit is to provide a platform where we'd be able to have a discussion with experts from policymakers, academia, investors, businesses, to be able to come up with solutions and strategies to be able to have a sustainable and equitable future for Africa.
Mwiga added that Africa is facing urgent and real threats from climate change and political shifts.
We gather at a time of profound urgency. Across our continent, the signs of climate change are no longer warnings. They are realities. Floods devastate communities in East Africa. Drought threatens livelihoods in the Sahel. Cyclones and rising seas are swallowing homes and displacing thousands in Southern Africa. At the same time, political and trade fragmentation are reshaping the global landscape, widening gaps in financing and slowing down growth.
The conversation then turned to Africa's place in the global economy and how shifting trade patterns, climate rules, and financial uncertainty abroad could reshape the continent's future. Economist and managing director at ESG Analytics, Sifiso Skenjana, said that these shifts present both risks and opportunities.
So we are seeing a shift in psychology in terms of trade direction. And so how does Africa start to remodel their own trade agenda and with which partners? And so I think that's certainly going to be a massive shift. And then the last shift, I think, which is funny enough, external to us but material, is what Trump is doing in creating loss of confidence in the American economy. And so the loss of confidence in the American economy is then, in essence, driving de-dollarization as an agenda.
Skenjana further stressed the need for African countries to chart their own path when it comes to climate and sustainability policies.
From a policymaker point of view, I think we certainly can't wait for the global economy to write the green economy rules for us. And so I think that's been what's happening, is that we're watching the global economy, or at least West, write the first terms of trade, whether it's carbon trading, whether it's carbon offsets and all of those things. I think we need to write our own rules from a green economy point of view. That's from a policy making.
The summit continues tomorrow with more discussions on how Africa can lead in climate resilience, ESG investment, and inclusive economic growth. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
It is 7 o'clock Central African time. Good morning to you if you've just joined us. We are Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. From the African perspective, we bring you news and current affairs, broadcasting live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda, Beda. Let's take a look at what we're covering this hour. Well, some of the stories is that we look at the anniversary of the first extermination order that sparked the German colonial genocide in Namibia. Also, tensions are rising off the coast of Gaza as the Global Summit Flotilla, a humanitarian mission carrying aid for Palestinians, was intercepted by the Israeli Navy. We'll find out about those stories and more. Let's start with our news. Here's Jolani Tulo Mwepe, and then Fikile Lingwati follows with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Israel's foreign ministry has announced that the detained crew members of the Global Sumud flotilla will be deported to a European country, though the destination has not yet been disclosed. The flotilla was intercepted as it attempted to deliver aid in the besieged region of Gaza. The United Nations has meanwhile expressed hope that Israel will respect the rights of the flotilla detainees and release them unharmed. UN spokesperson Farhan Haq said people carrying humanitarian aid should be left alone.
We want to make sure that all civilians are treated fairly and are not harmed. Our belief is that people who are simply carrying humanitarian aid should be left alone. We're aware of the different countries and the different fleets and different ships who have been involved in this. Obviously, at the center of it is the right of people to draw attention to humanitarian crisis, and we wanted them to be able to do that without harm.
Malawi's President-elect Peter Mutharika is set to take oath of office tomorrow alongside Vice President-elect Justice Jane Ansah. The former head of state staged a strong comeback in last month's election, securing 56.8% of the vote against incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera's 33%. Several African leaders are expected to attend the inauguration ceremony. Malawi's president-elect has outlined the task ahead.
The challenges before us are real. Our economy must recover. Food must be available for everyone. Jobs must be created. Our healthcare and education systems must be strengthened. Infrastructure must be improved. And above all, we must rebuild trust in the public institutions.
Youth-led protests have continued for a 6-day running in towns and cities across Morocco. In that time, 3 demonstrators have been killed and hundreds arrested. The BBC's Yusuf Taha has the story.
Protesters have called for the resignation of the billionaire Prime Minister Aziz Akhanouch. He said he was open to dialogue. In Casablanca, the country's largest city, demonstrators chanted against corruption and demanded better education and health care. In the capital Rabat, too, they demanded health care, not just stadiums. The North African nation is investing billions of dollars in co-hosting the 2030 Football World Cup.
South Africa's Constitutional Court will today provide the full judgment behind its July order that refused direct access to the Mkhonto weSizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma's bid to invalidate President Cyril Ramaphosa's 3 related decisions. These were to place Police Minister Senzo Mchunu on leave of absence, the subsequent appointment of Firoz Kachalia, as well as the establishment of the Madlanga Commission. The Apex Court in July stated that the matter did not fall within its jurisdiction. The party's recent attempt to revive the matter in the High Court in Pretoria failed after the matter was struck from the roll for lack of urgency. The European Parliament has described the hosting of the G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit in South Africa as a success. The P20 forum held in the Western Cape province was completed yesterday. It was the first parliamentary summit to be held in African soil. Vice President of the European Union Parliament, Christel Schaldemose, said as the EU legislature, they are satisfied with the diplomatic approach used by the legislative arm in South Africa.
I really think it has been a fantastic P20. South Africa is a wonderful, beautiful country, but our hosts, they have done such a splendid job to make sure that we had good discussions, that we met also a lot of countries that are not a part of G20. So a lot of regional parliamentarians and also other African countries that are not a part of G20 was here.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Rory McIlroy and his family are to receive the PGA apology over Ryder Cup abuse. Amajita bounced back and thrashed New Caledonia at the Under-17 World Cup. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Yesterday marked the anniversary of the first extermination order that sparked the German colonial genocide in Namibia. More than a century on, the descendants of the Ovaherero and Nama peoples are still grappling with its lasting impact. Amnesty International is now calling on Germany to deliver full reparatory justice. Melissa Hendrickse, Amnesty International's researcher and advisor on racial justice and international criminal law, joins us to discuss now what justice should look like today. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. How are you on this Friday?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and good morning to your listeners as well. I'm well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you as well. So, to set the stage for our listeners, let's start here. Could you briefly explain what happened during the German colonial genocide against the Ovaherero and Nama peoples, and why it is considered the first genocide of the 20th century?
Sure. Thanks. So, I think it's not a well taught or disseminated history, which is, I think an extension of the project of colonial erasure. But it's important to know that, like you said, the genocide by German colonial authorities against indigenous peoples in Namibia was actually the first genocide of the 20th century. It preceded the genocide during the Second World War. And essentially, it took place during Germany's colonial rule over Namibia in what it then called German Southwest Africa. And that took place between 1884 to 1915, that Namibia was subject to the colonial rule of the German Empire. And during that period, indigenous peoples in Namibia, so that includes the Ovaherero, the Nama, the San, and the Damara, amongst other different peoples, were dispossessed of their land by the German colonial authorities, by German settlers and missionaries. They were dispossessed of their land, of their cattle, and forced to sign kind of bogus treaties that handed over their land and made the German settlers responsible for the protection of indigenous peoples in Namibia. But obviously, indigenous peoples resisted their dispossession, resisted the colonization by Germany. And so after uprisings, anti-colonial resistance by the Ovaherero and the Nama, German colonial authorities began a genocidal war against the Ovaherero and the Nama peoples. And that started in 1904. And the anniversary yesterday was the anniversary of one of the extermination orders that was issued by a German colonial commander, Lothar von Trotha, where he called quite plainly for the total destruction of the Ovaherero people. And 6 months later, he issued another order calling for the total destruction of the Nama people. And during the genocide between 1904 and 1908, 80% of the Ovaherero people were killed, and 50% of the Nama were killed, systematically, deliberately executed, both in massacres and then through a campaign of starvation as well. Those Nama and Ovaherero people that survived the initial slaughter were then placed in what the German authorities called concentration camps. They actually established concentration camps in Namibia. And thousands of people were detained in those camps. They were forced to work, forced to build infrastructure for the German colony, railways, buildings, etc., for the colonial authorities. And thousands of people died in those concentration camps as a result of disease, because of the inhumane conditions. They weren't provided with any kind of adequate shelter, clothing, or food. People died of nutrition, and people died of exhaustion as a result of the forced labor. The final thing that I think is important to note is that those people that died, the Nama and the Ovaherero that died in the camps, their bodies were actually taken by German colonial authorities to German museums, institutions, and their bodies were essentially studied in kind of racist, pseudoscientific studies to prove the racial supremacy of the European, of the white race. And many of those bodies, as well as some cultural artifacts that were stolen by the German colonial authorities, remain in German museums today.
So as Amnesty International, you're calling for reparatory justice. Can you explain what that would entail and how it differs from the development aid that Germany has already committed to Namibia?
Sure. So under international human rights law, there's a duty on states that commit violations of human rights law and serious violations of international humanitarian law to provide reparation. And that can entail a number of things. The most well-known is compensation to the victims of the violations, but you also have the possibilities of satisfaction, which includes things like a public apology, memorialization. There is also restitution, which includes the return of any stolen property or pecuniary wealth. And then finally, you have the requirement of guarantees of non-repetition or non-occurrence, which essentially means that the violator of the rights must ensure that those violations do not occur again. So you need to remove the conditions or the acts that contribute to the violation of human rights.
Well,
this differs from...
Yes, go on, sorry.
This differs from development aid in the sense that development aid is really a voluntary offer. It is often seen as something, that is a charitable act rather than legal duty. And there's no requirement in development aid that compensation or restitution go directly to victims of human rights violations.
The response from Germany has that it has no legal duty to provide reparations. So under international law, what obligations do former colonial powers have in situations like this?
Thank you. That's a very important question. So this is kind of where the real battleground between former colonial states and former colonized peoples is at the moment. Germany says that because the Genocide Convention, which prohibited genocide, only came into effect in 1948, what their predecessors, what colonial authorities did, the atrocities that they committed against the Ovaherero and the Nama, does not amount to genocide, because at that time, genocide was not a crime. But we can see under international law of the time, atrocities, the systematic execution of civilians was not permissible at that time. And so the acts that were committed against the Ovaherero and the Nama were clearly unlawful at that time. But even if, you take Germany on its argument, under international law, where the consequences of an act continue into the present day, into a time when those acts are now unlawful, there's a duty on the state that is responsible for the commission of those acts to provide reparation. So it's clear under international law, under international human rights law, that there is a duty on those states that committed colonial crimes, colonial violations, that they have a duty to provide reparation to the victims.
Let's leave it there for today, and we thank you so much again for your insights, Melissa, and have a good weekend.
Many thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Melissa Hendrikse is Amnesty International's researcher and advisor on racial justice and international criminal law, speaking on the anniversary of the German colonial genocide in Namibia and the ongoing calls for reparatory justice.
madapiri pazochitika
boma la dziko la south sudan alengeza kuti wachiwiri kwa mtsogoleri wa dzikolo Riek Machar akuyenera kuyankha mlandu ofuna kulanda dziko wakupha komanso okonza ziwawa, ndipo mtolankhani wathu nkummawa kwa africa Afresa Unene akuwunikirapo.
muchikalata chomwe chinalengezedwa ndi nduna yoona zamalamulo komanso chilungamo ya dziko la south sudan, chikalatachi chinalengeza kuti wachiwiri kwa president wa dzikolo Riek Machar apezeka ndi milandu yokupha, yofuna kuwukira boma komanso kulanda dziko ndi kuyambitsa ziwawa. Riek Machar akhala akusungidwa mokakamizidwa ku nyumba kwawo kuyambira mwezi wa Marichi chaka chino. Mwezi wa Marichiwu asilikali omwe mbuyomu anali mgulu lomwe limagwira ntchito limodzi ndi Machar anamenyana ndi asilikali a boma a South Sudan Defense Forces SPDF mu chigawo cha White Nile dziko
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi madapiri.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
At the 8th session of the Specialized Technical Committee on Finance, Monetary Affairs, Economic Planning and Integration taking place in Johannesburg, African leaders confronted a stark reality. Under the theme, Bridging Africa's Health Financing Gap in a Changing Geo-Economic Context, the message was clear. Unless Africa closes its health financing gap, development will stall. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana set the tone, calling for fairer global systems and stronger domestic commitments. Timakatso Leshuru has the details. Our time now being 7:16 Central African.
Another session where African leaders talked about improving funding for their health budgets. 24 years since they talked and agreed in Abuja, Nigeria, to allocate 15% of their budgets on health. For most of those gathered here, this remains unattainable. They only spend 7.2% on average. Donations continue to be the strategy for funding public health, while only 35% of households can afford private health care. The rest are exposed to health systems that the leaders themselves don't want to use. The 8th African Union Specialized Technical Committee is a body of ministers and senior policymakers from AU member states. It provides expertise, policy guidance and recommendations on key areas like finance, health, justice to ensure AU policies are technically sound and evidence-based. The STC heard of concerns about the risks facing Africa, its stability, productivity and prosperity if it continues to rely on donor funding. This is because donor aid has collapsed. Funding cuts, particularly by US aid programs like PEPFAR, have put millions of people at risk and affected hundreds of livelihoods. The African Union Development Agency's NADO's Bekele Thomas.
Since our last gathering, the ground has shifted beneath us. Health aid to Africa has fallen by almost 70%, just as debt service threatened to consume a third of our revenues. Trade disruptions and rising tariffs have narrowed the space for growth. And the spirit of multilateralism and cooperation on which our progress depends has been retreating, replaced by fragmentation and insecurity.
She called for Africa to build health sovereignty by ending illicit financial flows and reducing 99% dependence on imported vaccines. Chief Executive at the African Trade and Investment Development Insurance, ATIDI, Manuel Moses, has called for local solutions to be found.
We need to step up as Africans to figure out how to support our health initiatives on our own, given that the health budgets have disappeared or have been taken away. So we need to respond, creating innovative solutions around this.
Bekele Thomas went further, saying Africa must shed dependency once and for all.
Africa is not passive. We are not here for bailouts or sympathy. We are here to lead, to design, and to deliver. The hospitals we finance, the corridors we build, the industries we scale, the energy we generate, and the food we produce will determine whether Agenda 2063 becomes a reality or remains just a slogan. The choice is ours. Let us be bold, let us be disciplined, and let us deliver.
South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana told the gathering that unsustainable debt and global inequalities are draining Africa's resources and stalling progress.
We must ensure that health financing is sustainable, not just for a single financial year, but for generations to come. This means strengthening our domestic resource mobilization and finding innovative ways of financing our health sector. We need to explore a range of solutions, including increasing our budgetary allocations and commit to increasing the share of our national budget dedicated to health in line with the Abuja Declaration.
Eswatini's Finance Minister Neil Richkenberg highlighted the broader financing gap over $200 billion a year and reiterated the call for Africa to take control of its own destiny.
Solutions lie within our collective agency. These include enhanced governance and accountability, closing the infrastructure gap by leveraging public-private partnerships, fostering more AFCFTA-led regional projects, and lowering the cost of capital by reforming perceptions through our own credit rating mechanisms and credible fiscal frameworks.
Meanwhile, the CEO of the African Peer Review Mechanism, Ambassador Marie-Antoinette Rose-Quatre, announced progress on Africa's own credit rating agency, AFCRA, designed to ensure fairer access to finance. It's been decided the agency will be based in Mauritius.
By the end of this year, AFCRA will have an established office, a robust shareholding base, and a strong management structure, with preparations on the way to issue its first ratings in 2026. And finally, I'm delighted to inform you that AFCRA will be fully operational by the second quarter of 2026, when its first ratings are expected to be issued.
From health financing to trade reform, leaders have spoken with one voice. Investing in health is not charity. It is Africa's sovereign path to prosperity. But whether all this translates to action remains to be seen. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
madapiri pazochitika madapiri pazochitika
boma la dziko la south sudan alengeza kuti wachiwiri kwa mtsogoleri wa dzikolo Riek Machar akuyenera kuyankha mlandu ofuna kulanda dziko wakupha komanso okonza ziwawa ndipo mtolankhani wathu nkummawa kwa africa Fraser Oneni akuwunikirapo.
muchikalata chomwe chinalengezedwa ndi nduna malamulo komanso chilungamo ya dziko la South Sudan, chikalatachi chinalengeza kuti wachiwiri kwa president wa dzikolo Riek Machar apezeka ndi milandu yokupha, yofuna kuwukira boma komanso kulanda dziko ndi kuyambitsa ziwawa. Riek Machar akhala akusungidwa mokakamizidwa ku nyumba kwawo kuyambira mwezi wa Marichi chaka chino. Mwezi wa Marichiwu, asilikali omwe mbuyomu anali mgulu lomwe limagwira ntchito limodzi ndi Machar anamenyana ndi asilikali a boma a South Sudan Defense Forces SPDF mu chigawo cha White Nile dziko
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi madapiri.
This September, Channel Africa celebrates Heritage Month, a time to honor the stories, the rhythms, and the languages that make us who we are. Whether you're in Lagos or the shores of Zanzibar, to the mountains of Lesotho or the markets of Dakar, we are united in diversity.
Najivunia kuwa Mwafrika.
Kukondolera Afrika ndi anthu ake.
Proudly African and fabulous.
Let us preserve our languages. Let's embrace our uniqueness. Let's embrace our cultures and celebrate the beauty of our continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Malawi's President-elect Dr. Peter Mutharika is set to take oath of office on Saturday alongside Vice President-elect Jane Ansah. The former head of state staged a strong comeback in last month's election, securing 56.8% of the vote against incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera's 33%. The government says several African leaders are expected to attend the inauguration ceremony. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
Malawi's political landscape has once again been reshaped by the return of Peter Mutharika to the presidency, marking one of the most dramatic comebacks in the country's democratic history. Having served as Malawi's fifth president from 2014 to 2020, Mutharika left office after a contentious election defeat, which many believed had closed the chapter of his political career. Yet, just 5 years later, at 85, he has reclaimed the highest office in the land, securing a decisive victory in the September 2025 presidential election. Speaking for the first time last week at a media briefing after the results were announced, Mutharika paid a moving homage to Malawians.
I thank you, the people of Malawi, for entrusting us with a responsibility to lead this nation for the next 5 years. This is not a victory for any individual or a party. It is a victory for our democracy, for our constitution, and most important, for every Malawian who believes in a better tomorrow.
Mutharika called for unity.
Fellow Malawians, the time for competition has ended. The time for cooperation has begun. Politics has played its part. Now the work of national transformation must take center stage. Today, I call upon every Malawian, regardless region, political party, or background, join hands as we chart a new path forward. This is the moment to put aside what divides us and embrace what unites us. We are one nation, one people, one destiny.
The Malawi president-elect also outlined the task ahead.
The challenges before us are real. Our economy must recover. Food must be available for everyone. Jobs must be created. Our healthcare and education systems must be strengthened. Infrastructure must be improved. And above all, we must rebuild trust in the public institutions.
Mutharika's triumph, winning 56.8% of the vote against incumbent Lazarus Chakwera's 33%, speaks not only to his enduring influence, but also to the shifting sentiments among Malawian voters. Malawians in diaspora have welcomed this development. In Johannesburg on Wednesday, we spoke to Hakim Habas.
Yeah, so far to say about the elections, they went very well. I think a lot of Malawians, they were waiting for this. They were waiting for change, big change. Since you see where we have been coming from, it was a long journey. A lot of people, they were suffering. So Malawians, they were waiting for this chance to arrive.
Abbas says the outgoing leadership was not for the people.
The leadership of Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, a lot of Malawians, they were not happy. It's a big lesson, it's a big call for them to wake up. They have been in the government, but the Malawians, they give them another second chance to lead. So right now, I think it's for them now to move forward and to see where this government, the way they were failing, at least them now, they have to wake up. They have to tie their shoelaces and move on. And then to help a lot of Malawians now, all eyes are on them.
Another Malawian, Maksud Kalinje, said change was needed.
No, we needed the transition. For 5 years, we have been in a situation whereby for some people it's okay to survive, but for the local Malawians who are, like we can say, the real Malawians, the mere Malawians that are working every day hard to trying to get put bread on the table every day, those ones it was hard. So basically, the transition needed to be there because the current government, which is moving out, it was like too much corrupt, just because they were using the money. They were making a system whereby only the rich people were benefiting, and then the poor people were struggling, and then instead of going up, they were going far down.
He said Malawians are not asking too much from their government, but an enabling environment to thrive.
Moving forward, Malawians don't require a lot. Like, they don't ask for much. It's mostly food. We can say mainly is food security and the cost of living. So the average Malawian doesn't go out to go to South Africa or Zambia to do other things. The average Malawian will rely on farming. They will know if the fertilizer is on a low price, maybe they want to build a house, the iron sheets are at an affordable price, the cement is an affordable price. They won't require much. It's only those things the little things that some of the people won't mind that, okay, fine, this is just a foundation to something.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
It's now time for our news headlines at 7:30 Central African. And let's say good morning to Jalani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Israel's foreign ministry has announced that the detained crew members of the global Sumud flotilla will be deported to a European country, though the destination has not yet been disclosed. South Africa's Constitutional Court will today provide the full judgment behind its July order that refused direct access to the Mkhonto weSizwe Party and former President Jacob Zuma's bid to invalidate President Cyril Ramaphosa's three related decisions. And finally, Venezuela says 5 U.S. fighter jets have made what it calls an illegal incursion into its airspace, 75 kilometers from its coast. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's catch up with what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's kick off with football news. South Africa secured their first win at the Under-20 FIFA World Cup after thrashing New Caledonia 5-0. Coach Raymond Mdaga handed starts to Mfundo Vilakazi and Siviwe Makitigidi, with Jody N. Sheen and Kutlwano Letlaku dropping to the bench. The South Africans came into the contest on the back of a 2-1 loss to France on Monday night, while Caledonia suffered a humiliating 8-0 defeat to United States in the Group E opener. The African champions will be back in action on Sunday night when they take on the United States. And the current crop of Amajita players are participating in this World Cup, and coming up against the formidable French and the Caledonian team is a learning experience. Defender Neo Rapo is hoping such opportunities will open doors for them.
The carpet, it was just amazing. And obviously playing against the French team, those boys are really good. And obviously playing against such people, you also learn as a footballer. And you know what, you can really get used to playing against such, but that happens when God opens doors, which I really feel like he will for a lot of players coming from South Africa.
And the Confederation of African Football, the President Patrice Motsepe will attend the CAF Zonal Union meetings ahead of the 47th CAF Ordinary General Assembly in Kinshasa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. The CAF Zonal meetings will kick off today until Saturday. They form an integral part of CAF's ongoing commitment to strengthen collaboration and development across all regions of the continent. Now, netball news. South Africa's national netball team will take on the world champions Australian Diamonds in a 3-match series across 3 states in Australia. South Africa arrived in Australia earlier this week, fresh from the recent series against New Zealand. Currently ranked 5th in the world netball rankings, the Spar Proteas will come into this series highly motivated and determined to improve on past performances. Head coach Jenny van Dijk has travelled with a 15-player squad. Van Dijk has emphasized that for the Proteas to become one of the best teams in the world, they must be consistently and compete against and challenge high-ranked opposition.
The 12 players we have been running with has been doing a great job for us. And the 3 new players have been training well. And they did get opportunity. One of them did get opportunity within the 12. But for us, it is important to also understand who the players are that needs the experience and that needs the exposure, and that's got what it takes now to be able to perform for us on a world stage. So not that many changes.
And finally, with golf news, the PGA of America Chief Executive Derek Sprang has said he plans to issue an apology to Rory McIlroy and wife Erica over fan behavior and abuse they suffered at the Ryder Cup. McIlroy was subjected to constant abuse and heckling at Bethpage Black, eventually snapping back at a fan before Team Europe went on to retain the Ryder Cup. McIlroy has since said the level of abuse he and some teammates were subjected to should never be accepted in golf. With such of the European team expected to return at the next Ryder Cup at Ade Mano in Ireland in 2017, including Rory McIlroy, Tommy Fleetwood, John Rahm and others, the Americans will undoubtedly face another uphill climb, this time on foreign soil. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of business as we say good morning again to Tabiso Lehogo.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. South Africa has secured commitments from Chinese and Indian car companies to upgrade their semi-knockdown vehicle assembly operations to full-scale manufacturing. The government is in talks with multinational car makers who have South African factories, including Toyota and Ford, and their suppliers, no ways to safeguard the industry's future as it navigates declining production volumes, a stiff competition from China, tariff uncertainty, and an expensive shift to electric vehicles. Auto leaders warned on Wednesday at an annual auto conference that if South Africa does not protect its industry from imports, it risks driving deindustrialization in the country. A powerful campaign for visa-free Africa has reached its 39th country, South Africa. Led by former Ghanaian MP Ras Mubarak, the Trans-African Tourism and Unity campaign is driving across the continent, calling for Africans to travel freely across borders without visas. But as the team prepares to leave South Africa tomorrow, Mubarak says he's disappointed with the country's response to their call for unity and open borders.
So this is a journey traversing 39 African countries over 163 days. We're doing this ostensibly to get African heads of government, and everybody else to adopt a visa-free policy where our African nationals can pick up their passports and travel freely within the continent of Africa. Seriously disappointing in South Africa, I must tell you, because we have not secured a single high-level meeting with South African officials, even though notices were given several months ago. And from the look of things, we may be leaving South Africa without, any official visit.
The International Monetary Fund's staff expects discussions on a new fund-supported program with Senegal to begin this month. IMF Head of Communications Julie Kozak says that the bank's staff is ready to move to the next phase of engagement, which of course would be program discussions, and expect to be able to start those discussions during the annual meetings. Annual meetings of the IMF and World Bank kick off the week after next in Washington. Ivory Coast says it has granted 11 new mining exploration permits to local and international companies for gold, cobalt and copper. This, as the world's top cocoa producer, seeks to attract further investment in its booming mining sector as it diversifies. Chandugo Legege has the details.
The new permits were announced by government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly after they were approved at a cabinet meeting. They come as Ivory Coast positions itself as a stable, investor-friendly mining destination amid rising regulatory uncertainty in neighboring Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, where military juntas are tightening control over mining assets.
Oil prices rose slightly after 4 straight sessions of declines, but were on track for their steepest weekly decline since late June due to market expectations that the OPEC Plus group could hike output further, despite oversupply concerns. Brent crude futures gained 18 US cents or 0.3% to $64.29 a barrel. US West Texas Intermediate crude climbed 19 cents or 0.3% to $60.67 a barrel. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,478 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 20, Kenya 128 shilling 441, and Zambia 23 kwacha 78. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5.33, Russia 81 rubles 93, India 88 rupees 72, China 71 13, and in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 23 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities markets, gold is $3,851 and platinum $1,565 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $64.32 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The journey by the Trans-African Tourism and Unity campaign continues across the continent. Members of the campaign embarked on a road trip on August 18th, traversing West, Central and Southern Africa. From Accra, Ghana, to Namibia and Botswana, passing through 10 other countries, the group has been presenting messages to leaders about the urgent need to implement a visa-free policy as a way of uniting the continent and creating opportunities for all Africans. To get the latest, we have on the line Ras Mubarak, former Ghanaian Member of Parliament and campaign lead for Trans-African Tourism and Unity campaign. Ras, how are you this morning, and thanks for making time to catch up with us.
Bright and early in Pretoria. Good morning to you and your crew.
Well, we spoke a bit some time ago, around that time of August 18th when you were launching this campaign. Can you just start by giving us a bit of background in terms of also what inspired this campaign for those who missed our brief chat?
Absolutely. So the campaign is ostensibly to promote African unity and to ensure that countries in Africa have a borderless system where all African nationals can travel seamlessly within Africa without visa restrictions. You know, because these were lines, colonial lines that were drawn to keep us apart from each other. And we started on August 18, as you rightly said. South Africa is the 12th country. We're traveling through 39 African countries in total. And we are on the road up until 27th January 2026. So this is going to take us 163 days. And this has become extremely important because we need to stimulate the economies of Africa. African countries need to diversify from their over-reliance on natural resources, which a lot of the time, have created problems whenever the prices of commodities fall or plummet. And so we want Africans to be able to, especially our governments, to be able to generate revenue through intra-Africa tourism. We want to showcase Africa to the world that, there's a lot more to this beautiful continent than famine, wars, etc. And the youth are, looking forward to getting sustainable jobs. And we believe that the tourism sector would generate the needed jobs for young people, but also, generate revenue to build more roads, schools, and hospitals, for respective African countries. As you may be aware, Africa makes about $1.9 billion annually from tourism. This figure could be well quadrupled. And so it's become extremely urgent, especially in a time like now. We've got to trade a lot more amongst ourselves. And I have said it time and again that $1 spent out of Africa, importing goods into Africa, is $1 spent to impoverish Africans. And so, we need to encourage African businesses and we need to grow what we eat and eat what we grow. It's been exciting so far, but unfortunately, I must tell you that South Africa has been a bit disappointed because we have yet to secure a single high-level appointment, to meet with government officials and present, a petition for, government to look into. But we've had endorsements from, SADC countries such as Namibia, such as Angola and Botswana, where meetings were held at the very highest levels, and we've had highest engagement in places outside of the SADC region. Places like Congo DR, Republic of Congo, Benin, etc., where all of these governments have made commitments. Because you see, the thing is, again, Rwanda has demonstrated that, tourism could be a tool to creating revenue for people. And it is, I believe strongly that it is on the back of what Rwanda is doing. That is why Kenya has followed suit and has also announced that they would allow for all African nationals to come to Kenya without the restrictions of visas. And this, we believe, is a good thing. South Africa is a big player on the, African continent. Obviously, one of the finest places to be in Africa, and clearly South Africa should be seen as a champion of the Pan-African agenda.
What has been most surprising to you about the journey so far? I know you've said that it's been exciting, and you mentioned those who've responded and those who haven't really, not yet. But what has come out to you as being most surprising?
Well, there were quite a number of surprises in places like Equatorial Guinea, a beautiful Equatorial Guinea, even in places like Republic of Congo, where they have some very, very good roads in spite of the challenges that they're facing. Because the narrative has always been that, a place like Congo, the Republic of Congo has some very bad roads, but we traveled on some really well-class route, and I must also commend South Africa for the seamless border, because we have had to wait in some places for 4 hours just to cross into a country. But in South Africa, and pretty much the entirety of the SADC region, the process took less than 45 minutes. And this is testament, to your commitment, to allowing seamless border travels for people who are using the border. So that is highly commendable. But there have also been, enormous challenges in places like Cameroon, where we were turned away to go and get physical, stamps into our passports instead of electronic visas. That took us 10 hours, back into Nigeria, on a rainy day on bad roads. But these are some of the challenges. And the good thing is no country is perfect, whether it's the Western Europe or North America. All countries have their peculiar challenges. And what we need to do as Africans is to strive to be better, is to strive to uplift people out of the challenges that they seem to be facing. But, look, this is a great continent with a lot of potential. If you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, they're sitting on a $24 trillion mineral wealth. In real terms, what that means is that the Republic of Congo alone can take care of South Africa and all the other countries in Africa if these countries were not generating any revenue. And Congo's resources can comfortably do that for 10 years. And so if we are united, if we're trading more amongst ourselves, I mean, the SADC region has a lot of beef. I don't see why, West Africa should be bringing in beef from Europe, Asia, etc. We've got arable land, and we need to take care of our own and make sure that the wealth remains in Africa.
And the journey continues until January 27th next year. But what's next now? Where do you go from South Africa?
We're heading to Lesotho, then to Eswatini, then Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. That is the end of the trip into the SADC region. Then, of course, we move to East Africa and then North Africa before we head back to West Africa.
Russ, thanks so much again for this update and for the work that you are championing.
we are in this together, and I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to speak to South Africans.
It's our total pleasure. Ras Mubarak is a former Ghanaian member of parliament, and the campaign lead for this campaign is called the Trans-African Tourism and Unity Campaign, and they are embarking on a road trip across the country, across the continent rather. They are in the country of South Africa currently, and they're passing through other countries, presenting messages of the urgent need to implement a visa-free policy as a way of uniting our continent.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools,
At workplaces, and too often in silence.
but it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out.
Because doing nothing is not an option.
Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence.
For all your favorite SABC radio stations,
Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you.
this message is brought to you by the SABC. Your morning companion.
With the stories that matter.
This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has called for the Israeli government to immediately release South Africans and other nationals detained after Israeli naval forces intercepted the global Sumud flotilla in international waters off Gaza. At least 44 countries were represented in the 500-person flotilla, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Belgium, Spain, Malaysia, Turkey and Colombia. We're joined now on the line by Ali Komapi, who is spokesperson for Africa for Palestine. Ali, thank you for joining us this morning. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Just to start with this, were you part of this flotilla?
No, we were not part of the flotilla. Members and associate of Africa for Palestine. We are a human rights organization based in South Africa. They were part of the flotilla. Not me personally. Yeah. You will not be speaking to me now. They are still abducted in Israel.
Yeah, I meant Africa for Palestine, the group's already there. But what correspondence are you getting then from Gaza, from some of your members as well as others there? If you are getting any messages.
We are not getting any. They've confiscated their passports. They've confiscated their cell phones. There's no mode of communication with them. What we know is only the updates the Israeli apartheid regime is giving to the world. I mean, everybody that they are vetting them, whatever, and they'll deport them, whatever. They are saying that, but we don't know their status. Are they healthy? Are they still alive? We have no idea.
The president of the country, South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has called for the release of these detained persons by the Israeli forces. Is that call alone enough?
Of course not. For example, the Colombian government, this happened in the early hours of the morning, the Colombian government there and then expelled all Israeli diplomats, all Israeli representatives from their country, because this is an act of aggression on a sovereign state. So Cyril Ramaphosa calling for demanding the release of the 5 South Africans is not enough. We think there are more stringent measures he can take. Part of those is doing what Colombia has done. We know that we have severed all diplomatic ties with Israel as per the government's parliament's resolution and so on. But we still have some representative of Israel in this country. I think he must just send out what is popularly known because of Trump, an executive order from the president to say that all Israelis and Israeli representatives from this country must leave in 24 hours simply because of the act of aggression against South Africa by Israel.
What kind of response would you recommend from other countries in the region, as well as the international community, in terms of responding to Israel's interception of the Gaza flotilla?
One of the allies of South Africa during the apartheid era, who supported our struggle, Palme, the Prime Minister of Sweden, said that the South African problem is that they want to reform apartheid. They want to make apartheid look and sound better. He said, no, you can't do that. You have to collapse apartheid and you must build democracy from the ground up. States in the region, state internationally, must stop treating Israel like it's a normal state. They must stop trying to encourage Israel to reform, to be a democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East that supports human rights. Cannot. The apartheid regime of Israel must collapse. Therefore, the appropriate action from states in the region and globally is to isolate the apartheid state of Israel like they did South Africa through arms embargoes, through economic sanctions, through sports and academic boycotts, through other measures to isolate the apartheid state of Israel, just like they did South Africa. It is not a normal state. It has no capacity to reform. It's a pariah state. In fact, we've been saying for quite some time, together with Palestinians, that Israel is actually a criminal syndicate. It's a mafia organization moonlighting as a state. There's nothing legal that they are doing. There's nothing legal on the premise of establishing an Israeli state on Palestinian historical lands. It's a criminal syndicate and they must be treated as such.
We spoke earlier as Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa to Israel's ambassador, South Africa's ambassador to Israel rather, and he was citing this entire situation as not a war of Israel against Palestine, but a war between Israel and Hamas and other insurgents that they've been battling. What do you make of that statement in terms of what we've seen now, especially with this latest incident?
Just a few correction in context. We do not have an ambassador to Israel. We only have a representative to the mission. We do not have we cut diplomatic ties with Israel. We don't have an ambassador. We did this, I think, in 2014, 2015, I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But this is not a war. In fact, it's a mischaracterization if we were to call it a war or a conflict. Let's keep context. Mm-hmm. People in Gaza don't have an army. They don't have a government. They don't have a navy. They don't have an air force. All they do is try to resist the apartheid occupation of Israel through what many in the defense industry call them fireworks, for a silly excuse for rockets. So there's no war. War would mean that there's two sides probably equal fighting. No, it's a genocide. One group of people is trying to annihilate. One group of people is trying to wipe another group of people off the face of the... Just imagine if they said during apartheid there was a war in South Africa. That would be an insult to it. It was not a war. It was one group of people, Afrikaners, oppressing the black native nation. So in Palestine, there's no such thing as a war. In fact, Hamas, it would be a mischaracterization to say Hamas is the one that's fighting. No, Hamas is only just one of the resistance movement in Palestine. There are many, including the Islamic Jihad and others who are fighting in Palestine against the occupation by apartheid Israel. It is not a war. What is happening in Gaza is a genocide, and it's not only Hamas. There are a number of Palestinian organizations that are effectively putting a resistance against the occupation, just like there was ANC in South Africa, there was PAC, there was AZAPO, to minimize the struggle in South Africa for freedom is a war between the ANC and the National Party government, would have been an insult. So it is not a war between the apartheid state of Israel and one resistance movement. It's a genocide, but by one apartheid oppressive organization on an entire group of people.
As Africa for Palestine, will you be now approaching the presidency and asking for more action?
Of course. I mean, this is also calls from the South African citizens who are now kidnapped by Israel. This is an act of aggression. For a better, it can be interpreted as an act of war against South Africa. It's illegal. Israel has no jurisdiction in international waters, especially on boats that are carrying a state flag. In international law, if a boat is in international waters carrying a state flag, and any act against that boat is an act against that flag nation. So in this particular case, like I said, Colombia has done the same. They've expelled all Israelis and Israeli representatives of the government from their country. South Africa must do the same. Cyril Ramaphosa and the South African government has no business having normal ties with a state that regards us like this.
Ali, we'll
the president of this country.
Thank you so much for your insights, and for making time to chat to us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for it.
We are completely out of time. Sorry to interject there. But Ali Komape is spokesperson for Africa for Palestine. Some of their members being part of that global summit flotilla in the international waters off Gaza, where they've been intercepted by Israeli naval forces. It's 8 o'clock Central African time. We enter now the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa from the African perspective. We are on www.channelafrica.co.za. My name is Asanda Beda. Let's say good morning to Jolani Tulo Mwepe. She has our news bulletin, and then headlines sports-wise will come after her by Fikile Lingwati.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The family of South Africa's former President Nelson Mandela is calling for urgent intervention following the interception of the flotilla vessels trying to carry aid to Gaza. President Cyril Ramaphosa issued a call for the immediate release of South Africa's detainees by Israeli forces yesterday. Among those confirmed detained are 3 South Africans, including former President Nelson Mandela's grandson, Mandla Mandela, acclaimed author Zukiswa Wana, and activist Riaz Mula. Mandela family member is Ndileka Mandela.
No one can contact any of the people that have been intercepted because they don't have phones. I spoke to Manda's mom. They don't have phones. They were asked to throw their phones in the water. In the one video I saw, we have not been able to communicate with Mandla. For me, I would sleep easy if I would not only talk to Mandla, but have what we call proof of life. See him and speak to him. Now, it's unsettling because we haven't been able to speak to him. I'm just praying, and we are praying as a family that he will be safe.
The United Nations has meanwhile expressed hope that Israel will respect the rights of the flotilla detainees and release them unharmed. UN spokesperson Farhan Haq said people carrying humanitarian aid should be left alone.
We want to make sure that all civilians are treated fairly and are not harmed. Our belief is that people who are simply carrying humanitarian aid should be left alone. We're aware of the different countries and the different fleets and different ships who have been involved in this. Obviously, at the center of it is the right of people to draw attention to humanitarian crisis, and we wanted them to be able to do that without harm.
Youth-led protests have continued for a 6-day running in towns and cities across Morocco. In that time, 3 demonstrators have been killed and hundreds arrested. The BBC's Yusuf Taha has the story.
Protesters have called for the resignation of the billionaire Prime Minister Aziz Akhanouch. He said he was open to dialogue. In Casablanca, the country's largest city, demonstrators chanted against corruption and demanded better education and health care. In the capital Rabat, too, they demanded health care, not just stadiums. The North African nation is investing billions of dollars in co-hosting the 2030 Football World Cup.
South Africa's Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mamoloko Kubai, has responded to former chief evidence leader of the Madlanga Judicial Commission of Inquiry, Advocate Terry Mudau SC. Mudau, who held the role for less than 2 weeks, left the commission, citing budgetary issues as his reason to resign. The minister stated that budgetary matters relating to the commission have been properly managed and communicated. She says at no point were formal concerns about the budget raised with her department, adding that Advocate Mudau was directly involved in the process of determining the fee structure for himself and his junior counsel. Advocate Matthew Chaskelson is the new chief evidence leader of the Madlanga Commission. Venezuela says 5 U.S. fighter jets have made what it calls an illegal incursion into its airspace 75 kilometers from its coast. The Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez called the action a provocation and a threat to national security. The incident comes amid escalating tensions with Washington, which has sent 10 aircraft to Puerto Rico and deployed a military flotilla in the Caribbean. U.S. President Donald Trump says the deployments are aimed at cracking down on drugs entering his country from Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro has, however, warned that the Trump administration might use allegations of drug smuggling to seek regime change in Venezuela. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 117144459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Bafana coach Hugo Bruce has accepted full responsibility for Tebogo Mokoena saga, and Kenya president promises more professionalism in the anti-doping agency. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
It's now 8:05, and after a book released in 2018 titled Senegal at Heart, former President of Senegal, Macky Sall, has published Africa at Heart, a book published in French and English, which gives an overview of what Africa looks like today and what the continent can do to empower itself out of poverty and youth unemployment. The former president discusses government reforms in Africa, and he challenges African leaders to lead from the heart. What does this mean? So our colleague Peter Ndoro spoke to the former president of Senegal and the current chairperson of the African Union, Macky Sall. Channel Africa's head of the Kiswahili service desk, Nixon Tasakana, provided translation.
Perhaps, Mr. President, we can begin with what moved you to write Africa Leading from the Heart Now. Why did you write this book? What was your motivation?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy to respond to your question. After my service, 12 years as the head of Senegal as President of the Republic, and after 25 years on the top administration in my country, I have occasion to travel in Africa to see also the problems, the major problem we are facing on this continent. So my decision was to bring my voice for advocating on what Africa needs in terms of sitting in the global institutions. We know we are a very big continent with 30 million square kilometers. We are today 1.5 billion inhabitants, and in 25 years, exactly in 2050, we will be 2.5 billion. So with this huge capital of, resources, with this population, Africa needs to have better place in the world. That's why we are calling for the global reform of the financial architecture in the world. We need more facilities to access to capital market on the right way. We need also to initiate discussions with the credit rating agency to have better conditions for Africa in terms of borrowing money. And also I talk about the education of our youth. We are talking a lot about AI, the position of Africa on this debate. We need in each country to put more STEMs in the education systems to allow this big and huge population and very young to capitalize and to leapfrog for this AI, and Africa will be at the will be with this new digital revolutions. So I talk about all this issue on this book about also the rights for women to have less work in the domestic affairs in Africa. We need to empower women to avoid also the domestic work that we are seeing particularly in rural area, how the African women are suffering. And we can, and I give a concrete example in the book, we can also avoid that by developing activities in that case.
All right, then.
Bon, je vais peut-être le reprendre en français, comme ça vous aurez le choix. L'écriture de l'Afrique au cœur a été un choix après mes états de service à la tête du Sénégal, constatant les problématiques en Afrique qui sont à peu près similaires dans tous les pays, grande population, une population jeune, absence d'infrastructures majeures, absence d'industrialisation. J'ai voulu faire un plaidoyer pour que l'Afrique ne soit pas toujours perçue comme étant un problème de l'humanité, mais plutôt comme une solution à construire ensemble, puisque l'Afrique ne vient pas au banquet de l'universel les mains vides. Elle a son territoire vaste, elle a ses ressources humaines, ses populations, elle a ses ressources naturelles, énergétiques comme ressources agricoles, etc., etc. Donc, j'ai voulu faire un plaidoyer pour que l'Afrique soit mieux considérée dans le Conseil des Nations, qu'elle obtienne sa meilleure place dans la réforme du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies, pareil dans la réforme des institutions de Bretton Woods. Donc, ça a été vraiment une parole pour le compte du continent, parce que c'est un combat que nous devons mener, mais aussi, surtout, j'ai parlé de la jeunesse africaine, de sa place future et de son éducation, qui doit mettre l'accent sur les nouvelles technologies, sur l'enseignement des STEMs, afin que cette grande population en 2050 de 2,5 milliards d'habitants soit pourvoyeuse d'expertise en matière d'intelligence artificielle et non pas juste consommatrice, entre autres sujets majeurs que j'ai évoqués.
Okay. I think we understood most of what you said there. I do now have a translator that's going to help us as well. But my next question to you then is, a lot of what you've talked about is not new. A lot of these issues have been with us for some time, and the solutions to these problems are known. The question is, why hasn't anything been done? Is it because there is no leadership to do the work, no political will to do the work? What is holding Africa back?
C'est un sujet important. C'est vrai qu'on a l'impression que rien ne marche, mais en réalité, il y a une évolution. Déjà, l'Afrique vient d'intégrer le G20 comme membre permanent. C'est un processus très important. L'Afrique vient d'avoir aussi un nouveau siège au Conseil du Fonds monétaire international, un troisième siège.
Mr. President, I've got an interpreter, so if I could just ask you to speak intermittently so that he can translate for us.
Okay. I can go with what I start.
It is a very important subject. It's not like something is not being done. Of course, Africa has just received a say in international institution, and with this we look forward to more reform in the Bretton Woods institutions going forward. Not to say that there is no leadership, but something is continuing to be done.
Mr. President?
Il est vrai que... Oui, yes?
Please continue.
Il est vrai qu'en Afrique aussi, les dirigeants doivent donner plus de temps à ces sujets transversaux du continent, sujets comme la dette, sujets comme l'économie, des sujets également comme l'investissement global. Cela permettrait de parler d'une seule voix et d'être plus fort devant les autres.
It is true and very important that leaders in Africa have to take these issues very importantly, mostly subjects like debt, like the economy, to make sure that they speak in one voice going forward in the global economy.
Il est vrai aussi que l'Afrique est handicapée au quotidien par des défis, notamment le défi du terrorisme, par exemple. Quand vous voyez la carte de l'Afrique, aujourd'hui, que ce soit au nord, les problèmes qu'on a envers la Libye, dans toute la bande sahélo-sahélienne avec le terrorisme, et dans le Golfe, donc vers la Somalie, nous avons ces problèmes de terrorisme. Et vous l'avez même au Mozambique. Donc ça, c'est des défis du continent, dans le lac Tchad aussi. Et ces efforts nous retardent par rapport à nos efforts de développement.
It's true that Africa is also handicapped by different aspects. For example, the issues of terrorism. If you look at the map of Africa, you see issues of terrorism coming up in from Libya to the Horn of Africa to the Sahel, like Lake Chad, even in Mozambique, for example. These are issues that handicap the development of the continent.
So how do we fix the leadership issue? Because we are seeing coups d'etats in Africa. We're seeing the military taking over countries. We're seeing presidents forcing their way to stay in power for their own enrichment and not for the people. How can the continent progress if we are dealing with these issues which we can eradicate?
Oui, nous avons en ce moment des problèmes de coup d'État, surtout en Afrique de l'Ouest. Ça a été beaucoup dit. Nous avons aussi des problèmes dans la démocratie. Mais l'Afrique est une jeune nation, si on veut parler ainsi. La plupart des États sont indépendants depuis 60 ans et d'autres même depuis quelques années, 20 ans, 25 ans. Donc pour un pays, pour une nation, c'est assez jeune. Il y a encore des défis de démocratie, de respect des constitutions, mais ça ne doit pas nous bloquer dans nos efforts de développement. Il faut tout simplement continuer à travailler sur le volet économique, parce que si l'économie va bien, la démocratie va suivre nécessairement. Mais s'il n'y a pas d'économie, on ne peut pas non plus parler de démocratie, on parlera plutôt d'anarchie. Donc les deux peuvent aller ensemble, mais évidemment c'est un perpétuel combat qu'il nous faut mener ensemble.
Indeed, we have a problem of coup d'etat, for example, in West Africa, and we have issues of a democratic process on a continent, particularly what you mentioned as leadership issues when it comes to democracy. But that cannot be a stumbling block for us to have a developmental continent. Rather, leadership have to focus on the economy, because if the economy goes well, the rest can go also well. The economy can function alongside the democratic process, because if the economy is functioning well, the democratic process also will go in a very good way.
Alors, je voudrais ajouter le fait qu'un leader, on le formate, on le construit sur une longue durée. 25 ans, 30 ans, 35 ans pour avoir un leader vraiment mature, capable de comprendre les enjeux dans son pays, sur le continent et dans le monde. Aujourd'hui, malheureusement, nous faisons face à l'instantanéité. Et ça, ce n'est pas seulement en Afrique, en Europe, aux États-Unis et partout. Les phénomènes des réseaux sociaux ont fait qu'il y a une irruption sur la scène politique et que ceux qui parfois dirigent n'ont pas nécessairement suivi ce processus de maturation dans le temps. Cela aussi, on peut considérer, joue un rôle néfaste, mais ainsi va la vie, c'est le monde qui a changé, les choses sont devenues tellement plus rapides, les citoyens sont devenus eux-mêmes par les réseaux sociaux des émetteurs de nouvelles, et donc on est dans un monde totalement transformé. Donc il nous faut aussi, par rapport à l'absence de leadership, tenir compte de l'évolution de nos sociétés.
I would like also to add that for leadership maturity, it takes time, perhaps more an evolution of even 25 years. But we are living in a more transformative world where the social media is playing a part. And then you have some actions that happen spontaneously where issues just rise up and then leadership come up without necessarily having undergone that transformation of leadership grounding to have a capable leader that can lead society. But that is the nature of changes that we are facing today. And I think this is what we have to deal with going forward in making sure that we have a capable leadership that lead the continent.
Perhaps, Mr. President, you can take us back to your presidency. Some of the things that you're talking about now, some of the solutions that you're talking about now, did you try them in your country and also amongst your peers when you sat at the African Union?
Oui, j'ai pratiqué ce que je dis en ce moment dans mon pays. Pendant 12 ans, j'ai d'abord engagé une réforme de l'éducation avec une concertation nationale en mettant tous les acteurs ensemble, les enseignants, les syndicats, la société privée.
Yes, I practice all this that I am talking about in my country. First of all, by looking at the transformation of the education, by bringing together all stakeholders, including the teachers, the lecturer, in other words, the professors, as well as the unions that are in the education space, to make sure that we transform the education sector in the country.
Et nous avons donc changé le paradigme dans l'éducation pour mettre le focus sur davantage d'enseignement des sciences, mathématiques, engineering, ce qu'on appelle les STEMs. Et nous avons effectivement développé aussi l'enseignement professionnel jusqu'au niveau supérieur. Et tout cela constitue en fait une mise en pratique de ce que je disais tantôt.
And we focused on changing the education system, particularly focusing on science and looking at STEM education, which also constitute what the broader science educations, and that is within the realm of what I have just said in transforming the education sector in the country.
J'ai également, dans le domaine de l'énergie, l'électrification rurale, développé un projet très important qu'on appelle le PUDC, Programme d'urgence de développement communautaire, avec 4 volets essentiels: l'accès à l'eau potable en milieu rural, l'accès à l'électricité, les pistes de désenclavement et l'allègement des travaux domestiques des femmes en milieu rural.
I also focused on the provision of electricity, particularly changing the supply of energy in the rural area, focusing on rural women to access electricity, particularly at four stages. One, access to water, access to electricity, and making sure that there is overall access to services in terms of energy supply.
Donc l'Afrique, avec près de 600 millions d'Africains encore sans électricité, ceci est réellement un challenge et tous les États, l'Union africaine, doivent en faire une priorité pour que l'accès universel à l'électricité, à l'eau potable et à l'assainissement vraiment soit une réalité dans un horizon de 5 ans, par exemple, ou 6 ans. C'est une possibilité si nous en faisons vraiment une priorité majeure.
Indeed, Africa still have many challenges, including 600,000 people without electricity. It's a real challenge, and to believe that this can be done by providing access to electricity, access to clean drinking water, and this can be done in the next 5 years if there is a serious focus on transforming this, so that it can accelerate the well-being of the continent.
Mr. President, still with your presidency, when you look back now, do you have any regrets about perhaps towards the end how you handled matters? Because your critics will say that you tried to hang on to power, that you were suppressing opposition voices, and that you were stifling the media. And in the end, the people had to protest to get their way. Do you have any regrets in terms of how things played out and what you could have done differently?
Je suis très étonné qu'on m'ait critiqué, moi qui étais un modèle de démocrate, qui me suis limité aux 2 mandats, qui est également défendu bien sûr mon pays contre l'insurrection et la déstabilisation, et qui ait voté une loi d'amnistie pour pardonner, y compris ceux qui ont par la suite gagné le pouvoir, afin de laisser derrière moi un pays apaisé. Je pense qu'on ne peut pas me faire ce reproche. Peut-être que ceux qui le font, soit ils sont partisans et ils parlent simplement pour critiquer, ou alors parce qu'ils ne sont pas bien informés, mais je ne vois pas de regret particulier sur ce que moi j'ai conduit comme président de la République du Sénégal.
I'm very surprised about the criticism leveled against me because I'm a Democrat. I led by example by leading with 2 mandates. I led the democratic processes. I also issued amnesty for those who were politically charged and let them free. Made sure that democratic procedures and processes are respected, and perhaps those who are leveling this criticism against my presidency are not perhaps well informed, and maybe they are just critics for the sake of criticizing me, but the record is there and set straight.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
What are your thoughts about the current administration and if Senegal is in safe hands now?
Non, je ne vais pas commenter sur mes successeurs. Ce n'est pas dans ma nature de faire des commentaires sur eux. Donc, depuis mon retrait d'ailleurs, je suis souvent silencieux et c'est la ligne que je me suis imposée. Tant que parfois, exceptionnellement, sur des interpellations, je peux réagir. Mais je pense qu'ils sont sur place et je leur souhaite la réussite pendant leur mandat.
It's not in my nature to comment to my successor. I have taken an approach of keeping quiet, and I think I wish them success. Even whenever I'm called upon to say something, I decide not to say anything. All I can do is to wish them the best, and I know that they are doing what they are doing, and I can only wish them success.
All right, and perhaps a final question, because the continent is so young, and the young people of our continent are the most disillusioned, and we're seeing them on the streets protesting more and more. What's your message to them about the future of the continent and what they can do to perhaps steer the continent in the direction that's best for all?
Oui, vous l'avez dit, nous avons une très grande population et très jeune. Donc cette population, il appartient d'abord au pouvoir public de leur donner des perspectives d'avenir. Donc c'est les éduquer et créer un environnement favorable pour l'emploi, pour l'investissement. C'est la seule voie pour les retenir sur le continent et leur donner un avenir prometteur. Évidemment, la jeunesse aussi doit comprendre que la vie n'est pas facile. Tout ne peut pas s'obtenir d'un coup, mais il faut des efforts dans le temps et il faut qu'ils travaillent aussi pour se réaliser. Voilà, c'est le message que je veux leur donner. Prenez patience, travaillez pour vous réaliser, pour vous, pour vos familles et pour vos pays.
Indeed, you have said it quite well that we have a greater population, a very young population, and that the only thing that can be done is to making sure that these young people are well educated, they are oriented in various skills, so making sure that they understand that work does not come at once. They have to go through a process of working hard and making sure that they work hard for their self-development. And this is the only message that I can offer to them, to continue working hard, but also being guided by the leadership.
Mr. President, thank you very much indeed for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Merci à vous for votre service. Merci.
Merci.
That was former President of Senegal and the current chairperson of the African Union, Macky Sall, speaking to our colleague Peter Ndoro. Also in that clip, you heard Nixon Tasakana, who was providing translation. It's 8:30 Central African time. Let's say good morning to Jalani Tulongwepe for our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Africa for Palestine in South Africa has called for the complete isolation of Israel through embargoes and sanctions. The comments come as its members and others who were on board the Sumud flotilla were detained by Israeli forces en route to deliver aid in Gaza. Youth-led protests have continued for a sixth day running in towns and cities across Morocco. And finally, Germany's Munich airport has cancelled more than a dozen flights after drones were seen close to its airspace. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's find out the latest from the world of sports. Good morning, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We kick off with football news. Bafana head coach Hugo Broos has accepted full responsibility for the Teboho Mokoena saga. But the 73-year-old Belgian mentor says he's still confident South Africa will qualify for next year's FIFA World Cup, despite the FIFA sanction that saw Bafana lose top spot in Group C to Benin. FIFA sanctioned the national team for fielding the suspended Mokoena in a qualifier against Lesotho in March. The sanction could still have dire consequences for Bafana. As a result, everyone is baying for the team's manager's blood. But Broos says the matter should now be put to rest.
People have to stop now also to look for who's responsible for that. We all know that we made a mistake. But first, between the first yellow card of Teboho and the match of Lesotho, there were 16 months. And in the meanwhile, during those periods, you played AFCON, you played qualifiers for a new AFCON, and you played World Cup. So it may not happen, but it's understandable. Who is responsible? And I see already that the minister also wants to investigate who is responsible. Well, it's clear. I'm responsible. I'm the coach.
Despite the fact that Bafana now trail Benin by virtue of a goal difference, Broos is still confident of qualifying for next year's World Cup in the Americas. Bafana have matches against Zimbabwe and Rwanda remaining, both on home soil.
Just focus on the two games that are coming now and support us like you did already the ones before, and we will see where we will arrive. But we will do everything for 100% to win those two games. And again, for me, it's an extra motivation, and I will try to put that in my players' head also, that in those two games they will never saw a team of South Africa that they will see now in those two games.
South Africa secured their first win at the Under-20 FIFA World Cup after thrashing New Caledonia 5-0. Coach Raymond Mdaga handed starts to Mfundo Vilagazi and Sifiwe Makitikiti, with Jody Anshin and Kutwane Lutlaku dropping to the bench. The South Africans came into the contest on the back of a 2-1 loss to France on Monday night, while Caledonia suffered a humiliating 8-0 defeat to United States in the Group E opener. The African champions will be back in action on Sunday night when they take on the United States. We finish and end with the golf news. PGA of America Chief Executive Derek Sprangui has said that he plans to issue an apology to Rory McIlroy and wife Erika over fan behavior and abuse they suffered at the Ryder Cup. McIlroy was subjected to constant abuse and heckling at Bethpage Black, eventually snapping back at a fan before Team Europe went on to retain the Ryder Cup. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Yo. Listen up. Channel Africa is taking the digital game higher. Check it out. We are taking our digital platforms to the next level for you, our loyal listeners. You know where we at, right? New website, a fresh new app, and they're on fire. Anytime, anywhere listening, Channel Africa brings the African sound to you.
It's the bomb, yo.
Stay locked. The future is crystal clear with us. Your new way to experience Channel Africa is almost here. Africa, stand tall and get ready.
Let's now get ready for our economics news. Here's Tabiso Lehuku to give us those details. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Nigeria has boosted daily crude output to between 1.7 million and 1.83 million barrels, and the number of active drilling rigs from the 31 in January to 50 by July, as reforms under President Bola Tinubu begin to unlock investment in the petroleum sector. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Senator Heineken Lokbabiri, announced the figures during a key address at Africa Energy Week in Cape Town, delivered on behalf of the President. He says the Project 1 Million Barrels initiative, launched in October 2024, was driving recovery in the upstream sector. South Africa has secured commitments from Chinese and Indian car companies to upgrade the semi-knockdown vehicle assembly operations to full-scale manufacturing. The government is in talks with multinational car makers who have South African factories, including Toyota and Ford, and their suppliers on ways to safeguard the industry's future as it navigates a decline in production volumes, stiff competition from China, tariff uncertainty, and expensive shift to electric vehicles. Auto leaders warned on Wednesday at an annual auto conference that if South Africa does not protect its industry from imports, it risks driving deindustrialization in the country. Group CEO of EFT Corporation, Clayton Hayward, says efforts are underway to create ways of assisting those who cannot access credit worldwide. This as 1.6 billion adults worldwide remain unbanked. Hayward explains.
And if you didn't have a bank account, you couldn't get credit, so it was just this repeating circle. Whereas now what we're finding is that we can create these ecosystems for small businesses and consumers where they can share other data about themselves.
A powerful campaign for a visa-free Africa has reached its 39th country, South Africa, led by former Ghanaian MP Ras Mubarak. The Trans-African Tourism and Unity campaign is driving across the continent, calling Africans to travel freely across borders without visas. But as the team prepares to leave South Africa tomorrow, Mubarak says he's disappointed by the country's response to their call for unity and open borders.
So this is a journey traversing 39 African countries over 163 days. We're doing this ostensibly to get African heads of government, and everybody else to adopt a visa-free policy where our African nationals can pick up their passports and travel freely within the continent of Africa. Seriously disappointing in South Africa, I must tell you, because we have not secured a single high-level meeting with South African officials, even though notices were given several months ago. And from the look of things, we may be leaving South Africa without, any official visit.
Asian stocks are set for solid weekly gains as rising odds of the Federal Reserve cutting rates in the near term helped cushion jitters around a U.S. government shutdown that have pushed gold to record highs and weighed on the dollar. Investors have mostly shrugged off the shutdown, the 15th since 1981. Even as it resulted in the suspension of scientific research, financial oversight and delayed crucial economic data. The lack of market reaction is partly because historically shutdowns have had limited impact on economic growth and market performance. The dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,478 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 20, Kenya 128 shilling 441, and Zambia 23 kwacha 78. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5 rubles 33, Russia 81 rubles 93, India 88 rupees 72, China 71.13, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 23 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold at $3,851 and platinum $1,565 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.32 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The South African Spaza Shops Association Young Traders has expressed that it is deeply concerned about the ongoing marginalization of young entrepreneurs within townships and informal business sectors. The association is calling on the South African government to open up buildings owned by the state for leasing to young traders as a means to foster economic empowerment and inclusive growth. Sisi Sikhalo has more on this story.
Right now I'm sick, very sick, man.
And I suppose you are depressed. You're thinking about your children as well.
Yes, ma'am, yes. I'm depressed now. This government, they face us, ma'am.
Simakale Monama, a mother of 5 from Winterfell Township, located in the Gauteng province of South Africa, was emotional when talking about her recent encounter with the local municipality. She has been running a tuck shop for 32 years, and recently the local municipality demolished that tuck shop, which was located outside a popular shopping complex in the area. She says she does not know how she's going to support her 11 family members. It is people like Monama that the South African Spaza Shops Association Young Traders say government is failing them. It says these actions of government are often driven by rezoning efforts that lack transparency and proper consultation. They also mentioned that young business owners are frequently excluded from the application and rezoning processes, leaving them vulnerable to eviction and economic disempowerment. The president of the association, Kotato Ramautswa, says they have not been given clear instructions on what to do. He says what is happening in Tshwane and Johannesburg is depressing for many.
They come, they tell us that it's the municipal land, we can't work on it because of where our yard ends, that's our land. And they're not giving any option for us to work around. So we do not understand, is it adolescent of new mayors? Because of those stalls, we're speaking about stalls that have been there for 20 years from now. Maybe we think it's an adolescent of the new system that has taken over government in certain municipalities, because of we're seeing it happening in Tshwane and in Johannesburg. What is hurting much is that in Tshwane they even demolished stalls that we know took many to university. So they've killed the income of many breadwinners.
Another hiccup that the association explained that it is facing is access to business premises. They say it is disheartening to witness how access to business premises, especially in strategic areas, remains reserved for those who can afford exorbitant costs, leaving young entrepreneurs and emerging black-owned businesses at a disadvantage. Ramautswa says this barrier hampers the growth of small businesses.
You have industrial hubs, you have Rankua industrial hub, you have Babele industrial hub, you have houses within the CBD that are owned by the municipality, which are left there abandoned. We're trying to leave them out to say we want to do our business there. We want to come with programs that will teach our young people skills. But the municipality is failing to give them to us. We go through the process only to find out that there's one Indian man who's getting those leases alone. He owns 50 houses alone in the city that are owned by the state.
Meanwhile, the association has also alleged corruption from municipal officials to favor those who can pay bribery. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Segalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
As a part of Cybersecurity Awareness Month this October, South Africa's Government Communication and Information System is hosting a webinar focused on the theme Responsible Use of Digital Platforms. This session aims to raise public awareness about online safety, equipping citizens with the knowledge to protect themselves and use digital spaces responsibly. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Simusa has more.
The discussion is focused on online safety, identify fraudulent communication, promoting digital literacy, and highlighting the role of government and organizations in driving greater cybersecurity awareness. Brigadier Rapula Masito, head of a cybercrime investigation unit at the Directorate for Private Crime Investigation, the Hawks, with South African Police Services, outlined some of the common trends the police are encountering.
Most significant one we observe on most instances where there is a ransomware attacks, either on individuals, that is persons, but mainly on the companies and the private institutions. This is very, very common and very high. We've got several cases that we are dealing with in terms of ransomware attacks and the denial of service attacks as well. So those are the two dominant challenges that we have.
The question remains, how prevalent are these trends across South Africa?
These are very rife in South Africa, and they are very rife almost everywhere because they started emerging in the last few years, but now they are becoming more and more effective, and then the threat actors are using these things more carefully. They harvest information, and then when it is time for them to attack, they will do so.
Umpile Hwati Nkiwani from Digiti Africa shares practical tips on how people can stay safe while navigating the internet.
Don't use open Wi-Fi. This one is a big one, and I think most of us, when we're desperate and we didn't want to buy data, we've done this. We've used public Wi-Fi, which is actually, it's diabolical. That it's one of the worst ones. And of course, build critical thinking. Like I said, I don't know if you guys remember Gumtree. They used to have this tagline saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So just use your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. If something if something doesn't make sense, if somebody's rushing you, if there's a link you must press into to go fetch some imaginary thing, if there's like a competition that you never enter, just don't do it.
Meanwhile, the Film and Publications Board, Holisane Ramogadi, underscored the importance of digital literacy.
As much as parents give children access to the digital platforms, parents do not have an understanding or comprehend how much goes on into those devices. My colleague from DCDT did indicate the issue of digital literacy, because the increase in platforms, the messaging platforms where the perpetrators are able to access the children and the vulnerable people are growing day in, day out, and the parents do not even know where to look. So the digital literacy becomes very critical, but also raising awareness every day is a tool that will assist us to fight with this animal.
The message here is clear. Think before you click and stay safe online. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Simos in Johannesburg.
All right, it's Friday, and this is now the part of the show where we get in touch with what's been happening in the world of the arts and entertainment. And to bring us up to date on what's been happening in the past week is our reporter, Tlantla Mahlangu. We call this the Artsy Beats. So let's take a listen to this week's segment.
Welcome to this week's African RTB. It's exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Tlantla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni launches Yoweri music album and commits to support the creative industry, and the new era of Miss South Africa launched. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, together with the First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports, Janet Museveni, this week presided over the launch of the Yoweri music album at Speke Resort Munyonyo in Kampala. The event was organized by the Ugandan National Music Federation under the leadership of Endrisa Musuza, popularly known as Eddie Kenzo. The album launch was attended by cabinet ministers, members of parliament, music promoters, comedians, artists, and other key stakeholders in the creative industry. President Museveni expressed delight at the diversity of the album, which featured songs in different indigenous languages representing all regions of Uganda. He thanked the organizers, saying that while the government may not do everything, it can contribute to its growth.
I want to congratulate Kenzo and Liam Toevo and all the musicians for finally getting a bit organized. This was not really our problem of the government, because when we started, the country was in such a bad situation. We had to start with the basics, start with peace, ensure there is peace in the country, with some of the verbs, the health. That's why you are all here. You don't have polio and so on. Then the school system, but we have not had time to deal with the entertainment, especially even sports. Sports we are able to build only Nambori. All the other stadiums are not yet done. We know it, but we had to first deal with the basics. So we had to deal with the basics first. But when Kenzo came, and others were trying to exploit it, they said that we had neglected the musicians. It's not true. Or that we had neglected the sports people. It's not true. By creating peace, we're supporting you and others indirectly. And with time, we shall concentrate on both sports and music and drama.
For the first time, Miss South Africa will not participate in the Miss Universe pageant. This week, the Miss South Africa organizers announced this year's 9 finalists and former Miss South Africa title holders Basetsana Khumalo, who won in 1994, and Peggy Sue Khumalo, who won in 1996, as new co-chairs. The South Africa pageant has undergone intensive restructuring following the exits of former Chief Executive Officer Stephanie Whale and former Creative Director Werner Wessels. The 74th Miss Universe will be crowned on the 21st of November, while the new Miss South Africa is set to be crowned on the 25th of October. Sean Lane, newly appointed Miss South Africa Creative Director, says the Miss South Africa organization is stepping into a new era, strengthened by its newly appointed co-chairs and driven by the bold commitment to youth empowerment across the continent.
So the new era in terms of the creative direction is going to be looking at culture, heritage, modernity. So what is heritage there? be in the past and what is heritage present? How do we merge those, and how do we start talking to the modern woman, etc.? From a Pan-African thing is we are now building leaders. We see our top 9 incredible women as leaders. These women are now going to represent us not only in South Africa, but represent us across the continent and hopefully abroad.
The Sandton Convention Centre in Johannesburg, South Africa, last weekend transformed into a jazz lover's paradise at the 26th edition of the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. The festival has established itself as one of the most prestigious jazz events on the continent. Rising star Munenyi, whose music incorporates Chivenda language and themes of identity and heritage, was one of the performers.
I'm excited for Joy of Jazz, particularly because it's such a big platform in Southern Africa. It's like the biggest jazz festival that we have. And I'm also just excited to play alongside some of my childhood icons. So Omo Sangare, Tandintuli, Duduzo Makatini is also there. That's really exciting. And I do feel like there's been a lot of growth since the announcement of the Young Artist Award, just in terms of how I view myself as an artist, as a brand, and also what that means for me, you know, to be associated with an organization that has championed the arts for over 40 years. I think it's a big responsibility, and I also think it's a great opportunity for me to leverage on as an artist. Yeah.
And can we expect new music from you anytime soon?
Yeah, you can expect new music at the festival as well. I'll be sharing lots of new music, but also sharing, you know, classics, and also just working on a project. You know, as part of the Standard Bank Young Artist Award, you also get an opportunity to make a project, you know, in the year of your tenure. So I'm excited for that, to share some work that I would have made this year as the young artist for music.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
All right, Ndlandla Mahlangu out and about this, so we'll catch up with her again next Friday. Well, that's as far as RT Beats is concerned. Maybe other stories will come through. But coming through as well after Rise and Shine is On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin. And Palesa is joining us to tell us what can we expect on this 3rd of October. Happy Friday.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
How are you?
Doing good. How are you, Asanda?
I'm good. I'm a bit tired, but I'm good.
That's okay. Well, at least you're about to go.
Yeah.
And you'll leave us at it. So go home and rest. But in the meantime, we'll be holding it down here on the Move. And today we're going to start off with a conversation where art meets healing, a beautiful art auction and exhibition that will be taking place. That is also a fundraising for the organization Healing of Memories. So just for global healing, trauma counseling, etc. And those people is a non-profit organization that helps with that all across the continent and the world. And then they'll be having an art auction collaborating with great artists to do this. So that's something to look forward to. And then in the second hour of the show, do you like house music?
Yes, I do. I actually prefer that from what we hear now.
Now, right?
Yeah,
there was an era of house music that just took over South Africa. And even though house music didn't start in South Africa, it certainly found its home and its place here.
DJ Oskido were there.
Yes.
Harrison Crump also gave us some tunes. What's this?
DJ Fresh and the likes.
DJ Fresh. Or what's this one I'm thinking of? Christos, yes. And Da Vinci. Yes, those are the major guys.
Do you know that Oskido's having this huge... it's like a birthday celebration, but he's going to be bringing back all the old school artists, all the old school DJs, like a house thing. But that's not what we're talking about today. I'm getting carried away. Today we're speaking about another event that's also celebrating house music. It's called the Audio Euphoria Music Experience. That's going to be taking place a little bit later this year. So we're going to be chatting about that and the impact of house music on our music scene here on the African continent. And then we wrap up with our artists. And today we're bringing into studio the one, the only Luan Dlunkulu.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And she just released a brand new album yesterday. Last night I was at her album launch. It was fantastic. So she's going to be coming in and experiencing this brand new album with us.
That's wonderful. I see the best jobs at Channel Africa are Palesa, Benjamin and Ndlandla Mahlangu. All right, so that's coming up here on the Move. So stay tuned for that. But as for me, Asanda Beda, and the Rise and Shine team, It's goodbye for now. We'll be joining you again on Monday, 6 till 9, bright and early. Everybody have a great weekend. Be blessed and stay safe. It's goodbye for now. And we hand you over to the news with Jwalane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories: Asaba, a call for Israel to be isolated and concerns of children's content on social media platform TikTok. Good morning. Africa for Palestine in South Africa has called for the complete isolation of Israel through embargoes and sanctions. The comments come as its members and others who were on board the Sumud flotilla were detained by Israeli forces en route to deliver aid in Gaza. Among those confirmed detained are 3 South Africans, including former President Nelson Mandela's grandson, Mandla Mandela, acclaimed author Zuki Sawena, and activist Riaz Mullah. Israel's foreign ministry has meanwhile announced that the detained crew members of that global Sumud flotilla will be deported to a European country, though the destination has not yet been disclosed. Africa for Palestine spokesperson Ali Komape elaborates.
States in the region, state internationally, must stop treating Israel like it's a normal state. They must stop trying to encourage Israel to reform, to be a democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East that supports human rights. Cannot. The apartheid regime of Israel must collapse. Therefore, the appropriate action from states in the region and globally is to isolate the apartheid state of Israel like they did South Africa through arms embargoes, through economic sanctions, through sports and academic boycotts, through other measures to isolate the apartheid state of Israel just like they did South Africa. It is not a normal state. It has no capacity to reform. It's a pariah state.
Meanwhile, the family of South Africa's former President Nelson Mandela is calling for urgent intervention following the interception of the flotilla vessels trying to carry aid to Gaza. Mandela family member is Ndileka Mandela.
No one can contact any of the people that have been intercepted because they don't have phones.